Chair, you have a live mic.
Go.
Thank you, Ms. Patterson. Good morning. Welcome to our County Commission meeting. As we get started, I do want to mention, too, there's some folks here for the NC Squared project. That's going to be continued. So I don't know if you knew that, but that will be continued. So I want to let you know. Well, let's get started in the right way. We have Pastor Kurt Anderson. It's always a pleasure seeing you here, and help us get started in the right way, sir.
Just a moment of personal privilege. These people work so hard, and they never get credit, but they will always get the blame. And today they've got an issue of both mental health and a bar. They need our help and prayers to navigate such difficult issues. But one thing is clear. When the people go north, it's like all of our problems disappear. How nice that is. Let's bow together. Our gracious God, grateful as we are for the privilege of living here, we seek your strength and guidance, that this body, given their stewardship over right government and development, may continue to strike that delicate balance, allowing for growth without clogging the arteries of our infrastructure. It's tough for so many who can't afford to live where they work, especially our law enforcement, first responders, educators, wait staff, gardeners. We all share the challenge that you've set before us to attend to the least of our brothers and sisters, and in all ways we seek the welfare of the community. Empower these servants in the high calling to which they've been called. We ask this in the name of your incarnate love. Amen.
Amen. We have the Pledge of Allegiance this morning with Mr. William Fuller. And I've asked Mr. Fuller after the pledge to tell us a little bit about himself and some of the things that he's involved in that's serving veterans. Mr. Fuller?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bill Fuller, and I am a Vietnam veteran. May I ask you all to join me in the pledge? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And as you approach the podium, I want to thank you for your service and what is usually appropriate to say, welcome back.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, guests, I thank you for having me lead the Pledge of Allegiance this morning. I run a veterans group at St. John the Evangelist Catholic Church under the Knights of Columbus. I label the meetings, "You Don't Know What You Don't Know." I bring veterans in from all over the county, and even when the snowbirds come down, they take advantage of the meeting or the meetings. They walk in, they walk out shaking their heads. As we all know, as at least the veterans know, the VA is very convoluted. They're broken into three parts, and they don't talk to each other. It's my job, hopefully, to get more information to the veterans so they can receive the compensation and the care that they actually need. It's an ever ongoing task to do that, but it's very important to me and for all those who are in the military. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Patterson.
Yes, sir. Agenda changes for May 27th, 2025. First, we have an add-on item. 16K3 is a recommendation to authorize the county attorney to make a settlement offer of $15,000 as a nuisance threshold for litigation strategy purposes in the matter styled Candace Lee Mills versus Collier County Board of County Commissioners, case number 23-CA-0746, pending in the Circuit Court of Collier County, Florida. This is being added at staff's request. We do have a couple of agenda notes. First, the title for item 17F should indicate that it is continued until the June 24th, 2025 BCC meeting. And the resolution for item 16A18 was inadvertently omitted from the initial agenda publication and was added the following day. We do have 2 times certain items. The first is 11A, to be heard at 9:30 a.m. This is consideration of the Fourth Amendment to the Land Contract and Naming Rights Agreement with David Lawrence Mental Health Center, Inc. for behavioral health center operations and funding use. The second is item 10A, to be heard at 1 p.m., which is a discussion to consider amending the Tourist Development Tax Ordinance to increase the rate and initiate the referendum process. We have court reporter breaks scheduled for 10:30 and again at 2:50 if necessary. And as the chair noted, the item 9A and 9B, which are the NC squared items, were continued. There is a, and I was going to bring this up at the end of the meeting, but perhaps now is the right time. There's been a request by the applicant to hear this item on June 24th. That's outside of what we typically hear due to the large volume of public objection. However, because we're in an unusual circumstance with this one, which it got started and then stopped and has been continued, wanted to discuss this with the board as far as your, if you're okay with it being heard on June 24th, or if you prefer for it to be continued to the fall.
Okay, we'll see if there's any effort in that regard. Commissioner,
I'm probably going to be abroad somewhere in Europe,
okay.
traveling on that day.
All right, so advise the petitioner that there's likely to be at least one board member not here. I don't know if you'll be able to participate by phone, but regardless of that, the petitioner does have the right to have a full board. And so this would then, if it's not heard in June, it would be put off until September.
Yes, sir,
October.
September.
All right. Any other changes to the
Yes,
agenda?
if we could get, County Attorney, do you have any further changes?
He didn't even ask.
No, ma'am, thank you.
And
Well, that's true. I figured that you'd either push the button or you'd speak up.
No. And you're absolutely correct, and I'm totally fine. If Commissioner Kowal can participate by phone, then we have a full board. If not, then manage it accordingly. I'm fine with hearing it.
The weight is on your shoulders.
I know.
Well, as I said, reach out to the petitioner and let's see what their position is.
Yes, sir.
And then we can discuss whether or not you have that opportunity.
yes, sir, we'll schedule it accordingly once we've spoken with the applicant. That we need ex parte on the summary and consent and any further changes.
Commissioner Kowal.
No changes, and I have nothing on the consent agenda.
Commissioner Hall.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. I have no changes and no ex parte.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Same.
And Commissioner LaCastro.
Same for me. No changes, no expert.
And I have no changes and no ex parte as well. I will say at the outset, we do have the hobby breeders ordinance on the agenda. It's item 9D. I do want to get into a discussion of it, but it's going to be my request to continue that so we can make sure that we get that ordinance in the right format. But there may be some people that want to discuss that, so that I'm going to ask that be heard, but with the understanding that I am going to ask for it to be continued. All right. Then we need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Seeing no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, passed unanimously. The approval of the minutes, May 13, 2025. Any discussion? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, passed unanimously.
Commissioners, that brings us to item 3, awards and recognitions. First up, we have 3A1, there are 20-year attendees. Santiago Ventura, Parks and Recreation, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I like that technique. Thank you.
Next up, we have our 25-year attendees. First, Lauren Beard, Development Review, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Has it been that long? How do you do?
25 years, Mona Vega Libraries. Congratulations.
In the library.
Commissioners, I believe we have enough time to take item 5A, which is a staff presentation on bear-resistant containers before we get to our 9:30 time certain.
All right.
Perfect.
Miss Carrie Hoxton, your Director of Solid and Hazardous Waste, is on her way up to present.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Carrie Hodson, your Director of Solid Waste. I have prepared a very brief presentation for you, or at your liberty, I can take any questions.
Well, why don't you go ahead with the presentation? We do have plenty of time.
Sure. All right. Ordinance 2019-36 permits customers to purchase and own county-approved bear-resistant containers. What you see here is a heat map of who has purchased bear containers and where they exist in Collier County.
Go back to that map real quick. You're
Sure.
flipping along here. We barely had a set. Now, this is a heat map of where the bears are active?
This is a heat map of where people live who have purchased bear-resistant containers.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Close to your house, good.
The county-approved bear containers, our customers have two options for obtaining them. One is that they can purchase bear-resistant containers through our two haulers, Waste Pro and Waste Management. They cost about $377. Price does fluctuate based on the market. That's their cost right now, and so it's at cost plus a delivery fee. The second option for our customers for having bear-resistant garbage containers is that they can modify their existing green top. What's really important for this is that our customers unsecure the top before garbage collection. With that being said, we have available on our website instructions from FWC on PDF form and video form for customers to be able to make that modification to their existing container. To see how easy or difficult this is and how much it costs, I went this weekend to my local hardware store, and for $33.18, I purchased the supplies listed here to make my own bear-resistant container. And it took me about 15 minutes sans drilling the holes in my garbage container. So I can happily give a demonstration to anyone that might need. I have not tested this. This is, again, FWC's recommendation to minimize the human and bear conflicts. And lastly, on our website, in collaboration with Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, we have a Bear Wise and Bear Cart section that has a link to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission's website, along with those PDF instructions and video instructions for making your garbage container bear-proof to help reduce any bear-human conflicts. And there's other tips and tricks on there from their website. And with that, I'm available for any questions that you might have.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Have we, to your knowledge, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Have we, to your knowledge, begun any kind of a population estimation of our bear population and its dispersal?
I would defer to Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission for any type of bear tracking. We just track the garbage containers, and also we send out surveys to our customers to see their satisfaction with the customers and if they've noticed any minimization in the bear interactions.
Okay. I would, at some stage, like to see that. I actually had an opportunity to speak on the radio this morning. There was a bear sighting in Fort Myers in a downtown area, in a fairly urban area, and I called in on the radio show and spoke about this presentation today about the necessity for education and why we're doing what we're doing here. The other side of that equation is growth. population growth, both human and our four-legged friends. And the commingling of those two don't always happen or don't always happen well, I should say. Certainly with that poor fellow that lost his life last month. My second question that I have for you is there was a time when FWC put out grant money to help offset the increase in the cost for the bear-resistant containers. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So that's actually how the heat map was established. Back in 2018, I believe, is when the Board of County Commissioners that time approved the county staff to work on a grant to obtain bear-resistant garbage containers. And after being awarded that grant, about a little less than 500 were sold.
Are there any funds available for folks that would like to participate in that?
At this time, we do not have any grant funds that remain from that project.
Okay. And the other question I had there was, are the apparatuses on our disposal trucks set up to be able to handle those containers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So along with our automated curbside service, that's why they have to be county approved. We have to make sure that if somebody wants a brand of container, that it's been tested with our garbage trucks to make sure that the automation arm will still work, because that's all built into our prices for our level of services.
And do we have anybody that can offer advice for someone who's looking to better protect their solid waste disposal processes? Do we have people that will come and visit with folks and talk to them about where they can put their refuse to be properly stored?
Sure. So as mentioned on our website, there's links to Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, as well as the instructions for modifying your existing container. And this was a fun weekend project. And so we also, in collaboration with FWC, go out to communities and give presentations, and we do those multiple times a year, usually at the requests of the homeowners association or the community. So from our interaction with Florida Fish and Wildlife, they've been very approachable and collaborative with us with working on educating the public. And again, our website also has these links.
I would like to recommend that all of us take this issue up, that no one is oblivious to the bear population, no matter where or what district you're in fact in. So I would like for us, over a period of time, for all of us to engage with the agencies, both our solid waste and FWC, to better educate our population as to how to best protect yourself, your family, and and reduce those inevitable negative conflicts that come about.
Well, our staff will periodically issue press releases and then just reports on staff activities. So that would be a good way to at least get the word out to folks that would be interested in looking at our webpage or receiving information from the manager's office. It's a great idea, but that would be a good start.
Yes, sir. We'll work with Mr. Mullins to put some information out as well.
Perfect. Commissioner Castro.
Thank you, Chairman. Kerry, I saw something on social media over the last couple of days. There was some chatter from some citizens saying that their garbage cans were being stolen, and then somebody chimed in and says, "Oh, there's a market out on the black market of people that come by at 2 o'clock in the morning and steal garbage cans and then sell them somewhere." Do we have a fair amount of these cans being pilfered? Either the recycling ones or the green ones, and we're replacing a lot of them because citizens are saying they were, stolen. I mean, there was significant discussion. It was on one of the social media pages, and I didn't comment because I didn't have the details if it was, urban legend or true. But I thought you would know.
Are you specifically referring to the bear-resistant containers?
No, just garbage cans in general. And then somebody chimed in and said, "Oh, if you want extra bins, like not to put out in front of your house, but maybe they're nice for storage in your garage or something, and you want to buy those." That there's people that list those on Craigslist, or they have some underground. They said there's a market for them, but we would know. Are we getting a lot of reports of cans disappearing and being like? I know that we replace broken cans all the time, but do we get a fair amount of reports that say I put my cans out on the curb and they're missing?
It happens from time to time. We meet with Waste Management and Waste Pro, our local garbage haulers, and we go over these kind of statistics on a monthly meeting if we're seeing a spike in stolen containers. The bear-resistant containers in particular, because they're so expensive, we do have concerns of those being stolen. However, they are marked with serial numbers and can be reported as stolen because we also have them, as you can see, registered to an owner.
But so since the meetings that you have, there might be some onesie twosies, but we don't have some massive disappearance of garbage cans, whether they're bear resistant or regular, throughout the county. That's not something you're seeing a large spike in.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Carrie, is this presentation coming to us because we've seen an increase in bears getting into the trash? So we're trying to be instead, reactive, or are we trying to be proactive and keep that from happening more and more?
Yes, so we were requested to give an update on the status of bear-resistant containers. Again, there was a grant that was awarded in 2018, so I'm not sure if that was the nexus behind the request, but it's, again, raises the public awareness to what resources are available to our customers.
Are we seeing an increase of
Oh,
bears?
sorry, we have not seen increases.
Okay, thank you.
It was me.
Commissioner Kowal.
Thank you, Chairman. Quick question. Because I know in the past, we've had incidents where some of our apartment complexes, where they have the dumpster sites, and, and over the time that the bears seem like they really know where those locations are. It's like a buffet. It's like going to the buffet, doing the dumpster sites. I know these are particularly talking about, individual citizens with these cans. Have we addressed that, and like having these when they build a new facility or build a new property that has these dumpster sites, are they taking precautions too?
Commercial customers can always have bear-resistant containers. There's an extra charge a month because there's just they have to reinforce the lid. So that's available to all of our commercial customers to obtain a bear-resistant lid for their commercial dumpster.
Do we have any registered speakers? Troy?
No, just presentation.
It's no, we do not.
Ms. Patterson, we have about 8 minutes. Anything that we can take up that would be very quick?
Yes, sir. Do we have any public comment, Troy, for
Yeah,
item 7?
We have one registered speaker for item 7. That is Christine Briggs.
Yes, you're, Ms. Briggs? You're,
I'm sorry, I was registered for public comment, number 9.
Yeah, you registered for that and for general public comment, so we'll strike that then.
all right, thank you. That was a good try, Ms. Patterson. Anything else?
Commissioners, we could quickly take item 11C. This is relative to the interest from the Fair Board in buying a portion of Camp Keys. I think this one could go quickly. Item 11C is a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners to consider and provide direction regarding the letter of interest from the Collier County Agricultural and Fair Exposition, Inc. to purchase a portion of the Camp Keys property to relocate the Collier County Fairgrounds. Trinity Scott, your department head for Transportation Management Services Department, is here to present or answer questions.
Now, this is not for final decision. This is just for our information and for direction to staff. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right.
And I'm going to try to pull up my presentation here really quick. Okay, there it goes. So today, that's okay. Amy threw me off this morning. Whew, glad I had my coffee. So today we are here to talk about the Fair Board has sent a letter to the county with interest to purchase 100 plus or minus acres of the Camp Keys property for relocation of the fairgrounds. The subject property is noted in red on this slide, with a little bit closer in aerial. The Camp Keys property was purchased by the county back in March of 2021. It is just over 1,000 acres. And at the time when it was presented to the board, potential property uses included fairgrounds, parks and recreation, debris management sites, workforce housing. The Fair Board submitted a letter back in May of 2024 with its initial letter of interest. And in January of 2025, they issued a supplemental letter of interest with a request to purchase 100 plus or minus acres of developable acres with access to Oil Well Road. They provided a tentative list of uses that were similar to their existing facility at the existing fairgrounds, but they also wanted the ability to host community events such as concerts and arts and craft shows, and also have passive recreation facilities. Last year in August of 2024, the board also heard a proposal from Baron Collier Companies asking to exchange approximately 439 acres of the Camp Keys property for an equal value of property at Silver Strand. We are currently working with Baron Collier Companies to bring an item back to the board on that. But from this aerial, you see that we have lots of acreage left to be able to effectuate the sales and purchase agreement with the Fair Board, notwithstanding what would potentially be encumbered by the swap property. So the Fair Board is currently leasing in its existing location, and their lease expires in 2037. The Fair Board would prefer to own the property rather than lease because it would make them eligible for a wider range of funding opportunities, such as grants and other programs that are tied to capital investment. The initial purchase price for the Camp Keys property was just over $13,000 an acre. This was also, the acquisition was financed, so the county has incurred some interest costs since the purchase. And based on this swap, discussions that we've had with the Baron Collier Companies, we have completed 2 appraisals on the property. They were dated January of 2025, and the market value at that time was $20,250 per acre. So our recommendation today is we're asking the board to direct the county manager designee to move forward with the Fair Board to develop a purchase and sales agreement to be presented at a future meeting for a portion of the Camp Keys property, and also provide direction on the purchase price per acre for the Fair Board. And under Florida statutes, the county may sell to a nonprofit organization at a nominal price. But if the board desires to sell at less than market value, which is the $20,250 per acre, we would recommend direction to include a reverter provision and deed restriction on the property, and those specific terms would come back to the board with the purchase and sales agreement.
Okay. Commissioner McDaniel.
Yes, and in an effort to move forward, I've been working on this for 8 years since I became a commissioner, working with the Fair Board, working with our previous staff, negotiating the purchase of this 1,000 acres. If you go to the map of that 1,000 acres, boop, you had it right there. The Camp Keys piece is the property that we currently own. The pink, green, hashed area is the land that we're discussing with Baron Collier to do the exchange. Don't get all encumbered on the exchange and the provisions, because the details of that exchange are still in process of being worked out. On the bottom left-hand side, which would be southwest corner right there, in that area is the proposition to relocate the Collier County Fair and the Swamp Buggy and the Sheriff's Youth Ranch that's currently next to the Swamp Buggy. Those other 2 agreements, the Swamp Buggy and the Sheriff's Youth Ranch, are in the works. They're not even ready to be discussed right now. We are ready to move forward with the Collier County Fair. I have always represented to the Fair Board from the beginning that we would sell them this land for what the county paid for it, plus interest if we have to finance it. The goal here is to get taxpayers' money back. Commissioner LaCastro regularly speaks, it's not our money, it's the taxpayers' money. And so in order to ensure that we do that equitably, we would enter into an agreement with them to sell them approximately 100 acres there. I did receive direction or authority, if you will, from AMU, the Ave Maria utility. They are welcoming the extension of utilities to that site, which will enhance the usability for everybody, including us. So it would be my recommendation that we go forward with this transaction at our cost plus interest, negotiate a contract with them, and go forward with that arrangement.
I don't want to slow this down, but we're rushing a decision here. What I'd like to consider, let's keep this on the regular agenda. Let's get back to the David Lawrence Center at 9:30 and come back to this, because there's some policy issues here, and I don't want us to just rush it because we've got another item. Is that okay with the board? All right, well, let's hold off on this because there are some serious policy issues there that I think we need to discuss, and I don't want to do that in a rushed manner. So let's move on to the David Lawrence Center, and we'll come back to.
Commissioners, that does bring us to our 9:30 time certain. Item 11A is a recommendation that the Board of County Commissioners review and consider for approval and execution, 1, a Fourth Amendment to vacant land contract with David Lawrence Mental Health Center, Inc., to modify the Collier County Standard Form long-term lease and include an operating agreement exhibit governing behavioral health center operations, and 2, an amendment to the naming rights agreement to clarify use of funds acquired with naming rights. Mr. Ed Finn, your Deputy County Manager, will begin the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Patterson. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Edward Finn, Deputy County Manager. As County Manager Patterson just noted, our objective today is to consider amendments to the various agreements with David Lawrence Center governing the Behavioral Health Center to be constructed near the existing campus, David Lawrence Center campus on Golden Gate Parkway. Sally Ashkar from the County Attorney's Office and Christy Sontag with your Community and Human Services Department have worked diligently on this contract and will be available to answer questions. If it pleases the chair, Mr. Morton, the DLC Board Chairman, and Mr. Burgess would also like to be part of this presentation. With that, Behavioral Health Center is a surtax-funded community priority project, voter endorsed in 2018. It was identified as a priority project in the 5-year strategic plan identified by the Mental Health Addiction Advisory Committee. The Behavioral Health Center will serve as a central receiving facility for individuals requiring services under the Baker and Marchment Acts. This slide simply identifies the Behavioral Health Center's planning and construction teams, as well as some of the key stakeholders of the Mental Health and Addiction Advisory Committee. Project location. Project is located on the north side of Golden Gate Parkway, one parcel to the east of the existing David Lawrence Center campus in the Golden Gate Parkway Institutional Sub-District. Quick view. This is a rendering looking from the northwest with Golden Gate Parkway towards the top of the slide. Timeline of the contracts we're considering today. The original vacant land contract and form lease initially was approved in 2021. I wish it was 2001. We might be done with it. And has moved forward since. I can recall last time the board was presented with this, I think Mr. Dunnick pointed out that this has been before the board, I believe he said 17 times. This would be another time, and Mr. Dunnick was not counting the trips to the surtax committee when he made that comment. Our objective today is to review and consider for approval the Fourth Amendment to the vacant land contract with David Lawrence Mental Health Center to update the long-term lease, add an appropriate operating agreement, and approve an amendment to the naming rights agreement to clarify the use of naming rights funds. Vacant land contract lease updates clarifies the name. The facility will operate which is a central receiving facility and will be known as the Behavioral Health Center, the Collier County Behavioral Health Center. It adds default language to tie it to the operating agreement, clarifies the maintenance responsibility. Specifically, it talks about the expected useful life so that it's clear our responsibility is replacement at that point in time, and it adjusts the insurance requirements as well. The Fourth Amendment terms of the operating agreement or the operating attachment to the lease, statement of work identifies the facility will be used as a central receiving facility under Baker and Marchman Act or other criteria as defined by Florida statute. Details the operating hours of the facility, number of beds, type of services rendered, compliance with existing agreements and guidelines. Emphasizes the furniture, fixture, and equipment shall be the responsibility of David Lawrence Center for the life of the lease, including the original acquisition. Also provides some clarification on some not so clear meaning of furniture, fixture, and equipment to include security video systems, cameras, artwork, and medical equipment. Provides an appropriate definition of licensure and accreditation for that David Lawrence Center is responsible for. There are three sheets dealing with the operating agreement. Collaboration, mostly that provides for the David Lawrence Center to make changes or propose changes to the county manager or designee governing exactly what the facility will be used for. The intent there is to be able to make adjustments to the services being provided consistent with changes in practices. Performance measures and penalties are included in the agreement. Funding states the county is not responsible for operational funding beyond a baseline funding that's essentially being currently provided. The options the board has and the options David Lawrence Center have are identified in the agreement. David Lawrence Center may request the board to make up for deficits if they exist. The board then has the option to either agree to fund or to agree to a reduction in the level of service. And in the event that an agreement isn't reached, that is a terminable event. So the board has the option to review. David Lawrence Center has the option to request, and the decision is the board's on exactly what's done with additional funding. Administrative provisions deals with the quality of staffing, incident reports, records review, safety and security, signage, and compliance with laws. Termination, we'll get into the termination perhaps in a little more detail here. If the board doesn't agree to change the standards in the operating agreement based on that 3-year review, either party at that point may terminate the lease. So that deals with the with changes in the use of the facility to meet current standards. If there's a deficit in funding, the board declines to make adjustments to the level of service and denies funding, either party may terminate the lease. Should the lease be terminated, David Lawrence Center will have the ability to purchase the facility for the greater fair market value or the cost of construction. If DLC fails to exercise its options to purchase, the county retains the land and the facility. There's no termination right for failure to meet performance measures in the operating agreement. Rather, that triggers penalty provisions and a corrective action plan requirement. The lease itself does not contain any termination rights outside of standard default provisions. Naming rights. Naming rights amendment includes new terms regarding the use of naming rights, proceeds, and reporting. specifically requires the funding of furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Excess proceeds generated through naming rights must be solely used for operational expenses for the facility over the term of the lease, provides some supplemental annual reporting, and a requirement to maintain complete and accurate records to support the requirement, the reporting, and make the records available for inspection. The recommendation, if the board wishes to proceed with the construction of this facility and follow the following actions are required: approve and execute a Fourth Amendment to the vacant land contract with David Lawrence to modify the county standard form long-term lease and include an operating agreement exhibit, and approve and execute an amendment to the naming rights agreement clarifying use of funds acquired with naming rights. If it pleases the chair, perhaps we could hear from Mr. Morton and Mr. Burgess.
Let's see if there are any questions from the commission before we turn to the general public comment. Any questions at this point in time? I do have one that may require Ms. Askar to help us out here. If there is a termination of the lease for whatever reason, what happens? I understand that there's some options here, but in reality, what are the options and what happens?
Yes, good morning, Commissioner. Sally Ashkar, Assistant County Attorney for the record. If the lease is terminated under the two terminable events or in the event of a default, as Mr. Finn stated this morning, then what would happen is DLC would have 6 months to purchase the facility at the greater of the fair market value of the facility or the tax dollar expenditure for the construction of the facility. So they have 6 months to make that election. If they fail to make that election or they determine they don't want to purchase the facility, then the facility remains in the county's hands, as well as the land that it lies on remains ours as well.
All right. Any other questions before we move to some public comment?
Yeah.
Right now. All right. Let's move to the other principals here.
I might need a little help trying to get the slides up. Good. Terrific. Thank you very much. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing us to be here to provide some additional information. We were going to start our presentation off with some comments from our Chairman of the Board, Edward Morton.
Good morning. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Edward Morton. I'm very familiar with most of the commissioners. Many of you may recall for 35 years I served this community as the CFO and then the CEO of the NCH healthcare system. I retired from NCH about 15, 16 years ago, and I took over as a partner in a financial firm that manages billions of dollars in municipal bond and corporate bond interests around the country. A large percentage of that is healthcare related. At the same time, I joined a private equity group, and part of my responsibilities are the evaluation of healthcare facilities around the country for purchase and holding, I might add. That's my background. I'm here today to talk about David Lawrence, our community, and our working relationship with the County Commission over many, many years. We have struggled together, and together we have improved the mental health picture for Collier County in a variety of ways. The most demonstrable way that we have done that, for those of you who have been with the Commission for a number of years, if we go back about 7 years, the jail population was somewhere around 1,100, 1,150. The jail population today is about 750. So despite the fantastic growth of our community, we have lowered the jail population significantly. And that has to do with the cooperation between the county, the sheriff's office, the mental health courts, the veterans services groups that have all contributed to bringing down the need for people to be incarcerated. And together we can, I think, hold our head up very high for the dignity which we have provided to a lot of people for many years. Specifically, as respects this building and the services therein, it's important to note that the wonderful relationship that we have with your staff and the trust that is built up over the years is a significant asset in negotiating with one another and arriving at an agreement which today the board of David Lawrence and the management team fully support. Those terms and the obligations thereunder and the pro forma financial statement. If I could comment briefly on the financial statement. We have worked diligently with your staff and with our staff and others around the state. And that pro forma as it exists today has been significantly reduced. The financial obligation that you saw initially has been dramatically reduced. And it's been reduced to the point where I, as chairman and a member of the board, am fully committed to covering those losses that do remain without an unnecessary commitment to asking for additional funding. That pro forma that you're looking at anticipates no additional revenues from the general fund of the county, from that which exists today. So diligently, we and your staff and others have worked so that the general fund obligation today will be sufficient with our efforts to work within this community to raise the sufficient funds to cover the remaining loss. That is a commitment all of us make on the board, the management team, and everybody associated with David Lawrence. Lastly, you may be aware of the dramatic changes in David Lawrence, the new buildings, the enthusiasm of the philanthropic community, to acknowledge and to recognize that collectively we can make a difference in Collier County in mental health and become a shining example, not only through our ability to address those that are incarcerated or arrested, but to this entire community, that David Lawrence can represent hope and dignity to the entire community, from the breadth of the east to the west, to the north and to the south of this community, have a facility that we are all extremely proud of. And this is an integral part of that. We must continue to struggle together to address the needs of this entire community, those that have and those that have not, because the dignity of the human mind is something that should never be underestimated, and we should do everything in our power to improve. I have a son who's mentally ill, and the efforts that David Lawrence and others have had, and the advances that have been made in mental health, are reflected in David Lawrence. I'd like to think that they are reflected in the future of David Lawrence as we hold out our hand to the Collier County and say, please partner with us again in the future. This central receiving facility, for those of you who haven't analyzed the data, just about everybody that comes to a central receiving facility is brought by means of public conveyance. People just don't walk up to it. It's brought by the sheriff's office, by ambulances, by people suffering from not only alcohol, but substance abuse and fentanyl, and the ability to react to those kinds of issues as quickly as possible. So public conveyance brings those people to the facility, which is reflected in the fact that 61% of those brought to the central receiving facility are uninsured. 22% of the people who come to that central receiving facility are covered by Medicaid, which covers less than half of the cost, not charges, half of the cost. 4% are from Medicare, which in my own experience in running healthcare facilities for many, many years, doesn't cover total cost either. It's about 85%. The balance of 13% are those that do have some insurance. So when you wonder why we're struggling to come up with a bottom line, it's because of the generosity of others. It's because of the Collier County recognized and your contributions and what you make and the grants that are made that give us the ability to provide those kinds of services. So once again, thank you for your cooperation. Thank you for your partnership over many, many, many years, 56 years. And help us do everything we can to bring dignity to the population of Collier County and the dignity which a single human mind should be afforded. They deserve nothing less. Thank you.
Mr. Morton, thank you very much for your comments. Of particular interest was the commentary concerning what I would describe as sort of the elephant in the room, and that is the ongoing financial obligations of the county as this project progresses over the years. I think that's been addressed, and I want to thank you for clarifying that. I also thank you for your service to the medical community over the many, many years. So, are there any questions for Mr. Morton? All right. Mr. Burgess?
Thank you. I was asked to speak to a bit about the scope of service and some other items, so I'm going to tackle those one by one. And I think I can get through these pretty quickly because, again, we've spent a lot of time together reviewing a lot of this information. But in specific on the scope of service, the central receiving facility is, of course, a 24-hour 7-day-a-week, 365 days service provider. We will never close, including during current recent hurricanes, and we will be available for the community every day here moving forward as well in the central receiving facility. As we've talked about, there will be 87 beds in the central receiving facility. They will be consisting of the 45 beds that will be Baker Act and Marchman Act crisis stabilization beds, dually licensed, along with 30 licensed psychiatric hospital beds that will be able to serve Medicare patients, which of course for a long while we've had to send out of county. They will be able to stay right here and receive services like all others. And greatly expanded Emergency Behavioral Health Assessment Center, ESAC. Currently at David Lawrence Center, we only have 3 emergency behavioral health beds for all of Collier County kids and adults, and that will expand in this new facility to 12. It acts as the single drop-off location for law enforcement for individuals that would be under the Baker Act or Marchman Act. It will also assist those that are walk-in and voluntary admissions to the facility, and we will make immediately available the crisis assessment and triage and other related services that are necessary for anybody that would be struggling with such a crisis. We will follow, as we do currently, the transportation plan that is in place right now between DLC and the Collier County Sheriff's Office. And that does get updated periodically per the state requirements, and we will continue to update that to ensure that there's efficient, effective transportation of law enforcement and DLC in this operation. And of course, we'll comply, as we always have, with both evidence-based practice and Department of Children and Family and other related licensure supports or requirements. One of the things that had come up in previous conversation is wanting to ensure that there were performance measures that were put into the operating agreement. that we have a number that were listed officially into the operations agreement, and you will note here that we will be screening, again, 100% of the individuals that come in will receive applicable clinical screening to determine what their challenges are and what the appropriate response is. We will be making admission of 100% of those that meet the criteria under the Baker Act and 100% of those meeting the criteria for the Marchman Act to be admitted into the facility. And we will make sure that we have 95% of the individuals, and of course we'll strive for 100%, but will be offered an appointment within 7 days for outpatient services if they don't meet the criteria. So of course, importantly, anybody that does meet the criteria needs that level of intensive support would go right onto the unit. If they don't meet that criteria, we also want to make sure that they're linked effectively and efficiently into outpatient care, and we're making that commitment that they will have an appointment for that outpatient support within 7 business days. We understand also that there may be individuals that don't show up for that 7-day appointment or within that 7-day appointment, and we're making a commitment to outreach if they don't show up. We will make sure that we will attempt to outreach those individuals and offer them another appointment, again, trying to ensure that we link as many people as possible into the care that they need. We have a commitment here that we'll be doing client satisfaction questionnaires to garner customer or client experience information. We have a commitment in here regarding readmission levels within 30 days, and that we'll be collecting that information and meeting that standard, if not quite a bit better. Dropping off time is a commitment that is part of the state criteria for central receiving facilities, is that the law enforcement will be back rolling again after process within 15 minutes. So we will be collecting that data and being able to respond to you to let you know how we're doing relative to that. The key is we want to make sure that people are transitioned effectively and efficiently so that law enforcement can kind of get back out into the community. And then there is a number of annual admissions into the central receiving facility that is committed to as well. We also had a number of comments that came in from the neighborhood during this process, as you are well familiar, and we made a number of commitments in the PUD, so we wanted to make sure to re-highlight those to speak to the fact that we are doing our very best to continue to be good neighbors in that neighborhood. One of which is that we will have a security officer that will be present at all times in the institutional sub-district. We will, if it works out that the county is able to, and we believe they can, put a bus shelter right by the central receiving facility. There is one that's just walking distance right down from there right now. We've also agreed that we'll construct a 10-foot wall that was requested of the neighbors that are on the northern border and the eastern border of the central receiving facility. We will create a security plan that will be in conjunction and collaboration with the Sheriff's Office, and that will be approved by the Board of County Commissioners to ensure that we're integrating best practice around security cameras and other security measures. And we made a commitment, and we've actually been doing this for quite a while now, that we are offering transportation support for all clients that are being discharged if they don't have a way to be transported to their discharge location. We've been doing that. We will continue to do that, and that we made a commitment that we will hold monthly meetings with the neighborhood so that we can ensure that we're addressing any issues that they may be having in real time in a proactive manner. Currently, we have this number of beds. We thought it was important for us to review the beds. I'm going to go to the next slide pretty quickly here. This just denotes that we have currently on campus 63 beds. One of the things to note is this asterisk that after Hurricane Ian, we were granted an increase in our licensed beds, but it's a temporary waiver. We only have that until the new central receiving facility is put in place. And that was because of us having so many people that were coming to us, and we were constantly over licensed capacity.
Mr. Burgess, on the beds issue, I know you said you want to kind of go through that quickly. that's a central issue to a lot of folks here. So I'd like you to really focus on that and tell us what the actual numbers are. And I know you're going to do that, but don't run through this quickly.
Got it. Okay. So this slide was really just to make sure to point out the fact that we do have temporary licenses that are in place right now. So currently you'll see that we have 30 adult crisis stabilization beds effective 2022. However, we were able to get that increased another 15 as a temporary waiver that's only available until the new central receiving facility is available. Okay? Now, this slide is really what gets into the meat of the beds, and that's why this is the one I wanted to maybe spend a little bit more time on. So basically what you'll see is what this all will look like. I know there's been questions, what's going to be at the new central receiving facility campus, the CCBHC, what is going to remain at the David Lawrence Center's location, and what's that going to mean as far as total bed capacity, because there's been some question, comments, confusion related to we're really not picking up many beds in this process, but we are clearly picking up significant beds. So when you look at the central receiving facility, which is in those green boxes, you'll see that's the 87 beds that we continue to talk about. That's going to greatly increase our adult services. You'll see the 12 beds there are the Adult Emergency Service Assessment Center. That's the emergency behavioral health room, if you will, for all of Collier County. Currently, that's 3, and that's going to go to 12. As I mentioned before, we have the crisis stabilization unit, the adult beds. In our community, we have 30, but that was increased to 45 temporarily. We'll have the 45 beds plus the Medicare beds inpatient plus the acute inpatient hospital beds. So that's 75 beds. So the license that we have, that we had, which was 30, temporarily increased, that's going to go to 75. So you can see we're greatly increasing the adult inpatient capacity for psychiatric needs. And again, those will be dually licensed, available for folks that are under the Baker Act or under the Marchman Act. And then what will stay on the DLC location is actually going to be an increase in beds as well. You'll see that we have 78 beds that are identified there. So all the way over to the far right, you'll see the 87 beds in the central receiving facility plus the 78 beds gets us to 165 total beds when everything is completely built out. What's going to stay on the DLC campus are programs and services that the commissioners have also identified as major needs and things that we need to be working on in our community. One of which is we're going to have increased beds for children. Right now, we've only got 15 beds for all of the kids in Collier County. In the new iteration on the campus, the current campus will go to 30 beds and will increase to have its own emergency services department, which will be 6 beds. So that's an additional 36 beds right there that we know are desperately needed for our kids. The additional beds are going to be related to future substance use disorder beds. And we know that one of the other issues that's been brought up is if somebody's in an acute care setting, like the central receiving facility, they're there for 3 days or they're there for 5 days, they need to have some place to be discharged for longer term support and care. Not everything can be solved from a detox or a Marchman Act circumstance within 3 to 5 days. They'll be able to go, we'll have more beds available for like 28-day longer term programming on the DLC campus. So that's where those total beds increase on both campuses significantly to get us to 165 total beds when you add them all up.
There had been some rumor, perhaps, or misunderstanding that there would be shutting down beds and replacing them with the beds in the new facility. But is it accurate to say that today you have 78 beds? Is that what you have on campus now?
We have.
Am I reading that correctly?
We have, well, actually, what do we have? Nancy?
Back a slide.
Back one slide.
What you got now?
63.
Right, you have 63 beds today, and you're not going to reduce that number with supplanting them with beds in the new facility.
No, the
Okay.
beds that are going to be available that are going to be in the new facility will all be we will continue to have the same beds that we have on campus and
Okay,
expand that.
There'd been some confusion about that, and I just wanted you to clarify it, so, thank you.
And I,
Yes, Commissioner Colwell.
but if I remember correctly, you said that's temporary, the 63. The minute the facility opens, we subtract
Bless you.
15.
Well, yeah, the license that we have, well, I think I want to make sure that we're.
Clarify that,
Yeah,
because
we're
I don't know
clear. The 45 beds that we have right now is a temporary license. That's for both adult and children. The adults are going to all go over into the new facility. The children are going to stay on the main campus. So we only have the 45 bed capacity license right now because we're going to be creating more adult services through the central receiving facility.
So I guess the answer to Chairman's question is then what's the actual beds right now? Not talking about the granted 15 because of the hurricane situation.
Well, it'll be 48 that are not underneath the temporary waiver.
Thank you, Mr.
Commissioner Hall.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Burgess. On the next slide, we have 87 beds at the central receiving facility. Of those 87, are any beds going to be transferred from another location into that to make that 87 beds?
The detox component that we have right now on our current campus, that is something that is under the Marchman Act. So those services will be provided under the central receiving facility.
My question, of the 87 beds, are any going to be transferred in to make that 87 up? I'm looking for the net increase in beds for the taxpayers. I'm looking, are you going to have 87 brand-new beds, or are there going to be some beds transferred from another location into the central facility, the central receiving facility to make up the 87 beds? I had heard, and it could be misinformation, that 27 beds were going to come into the central receiving facility from another location that David Lawrence Center operates for a net increase of 60 beds. I just want to make sure if that's true or false.
No, the number of beds that are going to be in the new facility, the 87 beds, currently we have 3 emergency services beds that are available. That service will now be provided at the new facility. The 18 beds of detox, that service is going to be provided within the central receiving facility. So we're not technically losing beds, we're providing the services in the new facility.
I'm still not clear on the answer. I don't care what you're doing with each bed, whether you do an adult bed or a Marchman bed or a Medicare inpatient. I don't care what the specific thing is. If we go for this central receiving facility, are there going to be 87 brand-new beds without causing any transfers among the David Lawrence Center facility to obtain those beds?
This is Nancy Dauphiné. She's our Chief Operating Officer, and I just want to make sure we give her an opportunity to try to answer that question.
And I think the simple question is, if I'm understanding it, is you have a certain number of beds today. 12 of them, or whatever the number was, are temporary, and they go away because of the license. So we don't count those. So you have a certain number of beds today. That number is X. And then you're going to have new beds in the facility. That'll be Y. Are the total beds going forward X plus Y? I think is really what the question is. Are you losing beds?
What I believe we're talking about, again, Nancy Dauphiné, for the record, Chief Operating Officer, is that we have 30 adult beds now, which will become 75 beds in the new adult unit. The new central receiving facility will have 75 Baker Act receiving beds. We only have 30 right now when we started this process. 3 ESAC beds now become 12 ESAC beds in the new building. That was always the plan, was we didn't have enough adult beds, so we're going to create a big adult unit there, leave the kids on the main unit, and have room for expansion on the original campus. Does that make sense? I don't know. No?
What's the net increase in beds?
102
Okay. And
between the two campuses, 165 beds between the two
what is the
campuses
net,
after.
what is the net increase in beds in the new central receiving facility?
That would be 57, I guess. I mean, if you think we have 30 and 3 now, and we're going to 75 and 12.
67-ish.
Yeah, 67.
I mean, it's the hard thing is that you can't do everything in the current beds that they're going to be able to do in the new.
That's why I was trying to simplify this. And that's why I wanted you to spend some time on that, because I knew this was going to be a big issue. And again, I'm going to repeat myself, and I hate to do that, because it irritates me when other people repeat themselves. But we have a certain number of beds today. And, okay, we have a certain number of beds today. Now, 12 of those disappear. Okay, so we're not going to count those 12. So delete those. You have a certain number of beds minus that 12 today. When you open up the new facility, you're going to have some additional beds. And I think the question simply is, between X that you have today, minus the 12, and the Y that you're creating in the new facility, how are you going to have X plus Y beds, or is there going to be some reduction in the number? We're not concerned about the use. I think Commissioner Hall said he was not concerned about the use, just looking at the number. That's all.
So just to be clear, you want to know on our current campus, the number of beds we have and what will be on the new campus? 48 on our current campus now before we build the new building. The new building has 87.
Understood. Now you got 48 on your campus now. When the new building opens, how many will you have on your campus?
We're going to renovate to make 78 beds.
Okay, so we're not losing beds by
No.
building this facility.
We're increasing in both locations.
Commissioner Hall, does that answer your question?
That's all I was asking. What was the net increase in beds?
140.
Okay. Commissioner McDaniel.
Yes, and maybe there that was a fine explanation. I think it was a bit hard for me because your previous slide, go to that previous slide. Shows 63 beds, up from 48 beds based upon a temporary permit. So we're up here trying to do math, and then you go to the next slide. It shows 78 beds. We're not seeing 78 beds. You just got done telling us that 63 are there now, and that 12 of them or so are going to go away with this temporary permit. So we weren't hearing the redo of the current facility for the expansion of the operations within the current facility. As Commissioner Saunders has shared, it's been represented to many of us that the beds that you have in the current facility are going to the new facility, and there's not the represented net increase in the beds that we were thinking. So that explanation got better for me anyway.
I apologize. I think the temporary licensure might have been the element that.
Well, the 63 and 78 on one slide, I guess you have 63 today, and then here you're saying you have 78, and so we weren't. I wasn't seeing the math.
And the good news is the math was just pluses and minuses. There was no real complicated math here.
Right.
I didn't have to take my shoes off. Yeah.
Commissioners, we have Christy Sontag here who has worked on this even before the central receiving facility. So if you have something you want to add to this to help clarify, Christy.
Christy Sontag, Community and Human Services Director for the record. Mr. Burgess, I just want to clarify for the commissioners, you currently have 30 adult CSU beds, correct? Take out the temporary license.
Correct.
And those 30 beds, correct me if I'm wrong, are moving from the Bathy Lane, the main campus, to the new structure, correct?
Yes.
And you currently have 3 ESAC beds.
Correct.
And you're going to increase, you're moving those 3 over, so that's a net increase of 8, so that brings us to 12. And the 15 detox beds you have now, you're moving those as well.
Correct.
Okay, so you're moving 48 beds.
Right.
And then you'll have 87.
Correct.
Okay. Does that answer your question,
Yeah, and
Commissioner?
then they're building new beds to replace.
They're building new beds on the main campus.
At that point, we're only talking about
Yeah.
use. We're not talking about
Yeah.
numbers.
Right.
That's exactly correct.
Commissioner LaCastro.
Okay, let me put this in plain math, all right? Okay, here's what we're asking. You've answered it, but we're trying to get, first of all, this is so disappointing, and I'm gonna have more to say afterwards. But if we build 87 beds, okay, and we've had some funny math here, so I'm going to use some set numbers. If we build 87 beds and then you take 30 that are in another facility and close those down and then move those over, then we haven't increased by 87 beds. You've taken 30 of our 87, and so that's the delta. That's what Commissioner Hall's trying to get at. That's what we're all trying to get at. And everyone's tap dancing around it, okay? We're trying to figure, did we build a facility that added 87 beds to DLC? That answer is no, okay? And I'm the biggest supporter of this. But I'm telling you, we're not building the International Space Station here. This has come before the commissioners 17 times. We should all be embarrassed about this, embarrassed with the huge need, and I'll have more to say here. But to get to this math equation, okay, I think we all took at least Algebra 1. If I have a building with 87 beds and you, I won't use the word steal, you acquire 30 of those that were in another building to move them over, then the building we just built that has 87 beds in it doesn't have 87. It has 87 minus 30 because the 30 just moved over from building A to building B. I'm not saying that's a huge showstopper, but one of the things we're trying to get at, and Commissioner Hall eloquently started this question, is what are we providing the taxpayers? And if all we're doing is a little bit of a shell game with some of the beds, and it's all needed, so nobody's sitting here saying this is, the sky is falling. But in the end, when some people think DLC is staying exactly where it is, and we're building a facility to increase 87 beds, we're not. We're building 87 beds, and then you're moving some of yours, over there, and then maybe we're going to have like 50 more beds than what you had previously. I mean, I know I'm rounding up the numbers, but I'm pretty certain with the meetings that I've had with our county manager, with our clerk of courts, I mean, this isn't complicated here, and everyone's trying to kind of sort of make it sound like, well, the delta is a positive, it's a positive, but it's not the full positive. And I'm not saying that like I said, that's a showstopper. I understand what you're doing to move things around, to increase have a much more cohesive and a better flow and all of that. But we also don't want to cloud this and make it sound like we're building a facility that's adding 87 beds. It is. But then before the first person walks in the door, DLC is going to walk over and put pillows on 30 of the 87 beds, and they're already spoken for because you're moving them from another facility. I mean, am I correct? It's plain math.
Yeah, I mean, the math is it's a net pickup in all operations. So it's a net.
I got that, but it's not a net pickup of 87. Yes or no?
That's correct.
Yeah, I know. And that's what we're all trying to get to. It's like as soon as the 87 beds come online, 30 of them are already spoken for because you're moving them over from another facility. And like I said, I'm not saying that. I'm a huge supporter of this, but we're also trying to figure out what the net number is, the net new number. But I'm speaking. I'm not done.
I wanted to clarify something for you. I mean,
okay.
Because you asked a question.
Okay.
He answered it, but he didn't answer the question you asked.
Okay.
So
somebody answer it.
And it was a very important one, because I think you said you got 87 beds now, and you got 78 beds now, and when you open up, you're not going to have 165. You're not going to have that 78.
Right.
And he said yes, but what he was saying is, yes, we are going to have the 78 beds, and we are going to have the 87. But I just want to make sure you guys are communicating.
Well, we're not, because I also hear within the answer that beds that are in another facility are going to be shut down and moved, and those beds will be moved over, and they will be mixed into the 87. Correct? I mean, I've heard that 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, I mean, so the whole premise of a central receiving facility is to have one site that's providing those like services that are necessary for adults that are in crisis, Baker Act or Marchman Act. So we need to move our current bed availability,
Totally
if you will,
get that.
to the new site. So you're absolutely correct. It's going to have 87 beds in this facility, of which we're already operating 30 of those like beds.
Right, bingo. There's some involved in this discussion, though, that I think are assuming that the 87, nothing else moves. Everything is static at DLC, and then we cut the ribbon on this new building that has 87 more beds, and that's true. But then, like you said, you're about to move some over and acquire instantaneously the 87, which means the delta at the end of what we're increasing bed-wise isn't 87. It's less than that as far as new beds that you never had. And like you said, it's about 30 that you're moving over because, like you said, you're trying to get everything under one roof correctly.
Right.
But we've got some in these discussions that say we're building a facility. It's got 87 new beds added to what they already have. It's a huge increase in the beds. It is an increase, but it's not an increase of 87 brand new beds that you've never had.
Correct.
It's going to be a mix.
And I completely agree with that. I think it's really important, though, to state right after that, though, it is a cumulative net increase across both.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't want people to leave thinking that it's not a pickup in support and services and beds for our community. It's a significant pickup. It's just a little bit of a realignment based on what makes sense from a central receiving provision standpoint and operating those beds. It wouldn't make sense for us to try to keep the 30 beds.
Right. But it's not a pickup of 87 in the end. It's not. It's
Not
87 new ones.
Not
but then,
in that building.
right.
But
Yeah.
when you look at both campuses, it's a huge pickup.
Well, of course. Yeah. I mean, we're building a new building. It better be a pickup.
Nancy Dauphin, I just want to make one clarification. The current Baker Act unit that we have on the Bathy Lane campus that has existed there for decades is a 30-bed license for kids and adults. It's one shared license. So when that means we always meant to keep the kids on the main campus. So all 30 beds, that's a shared adult and kid license. So it's not a 30-bed adults going to the new building. It's a flexible license. So on any given day, we may have had 10 kids, 20 adults. It's flexible, but that means it's not a full 30 adult beds that we're picking up from the main campus and moving over. It's a shared license, and it will become fully adults on the new campus, and the children have to remain. So I think it's important to understand that the children is still part of that bed count, the children's unit.
But how many beds in your current facility basically get loaded up into a moving van and go away after we cut the ribbon on this building that has 87? I mean, I'm trying to put this in third grade terms.
If we moved 30 over there would be 0 kids' beds on the main campus, on the
Right.
Bathy Lane campus.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we could move 30, but then you would have 0 kids. So usually we had about a 19 and 11 split. So we would probably move 19 and keep 11, but we don't have to do that because we have that unit available to immediately become a full kids unit.
My last comment will be, I think the initial thought, 17 meetings ago was we were going to build a building that was going to have 87, 100 beds. I mean, the number has kept changing, and you weren't changing anything on your side. You weren't moving over. Maybe there were some onesie twosies, but it seems like that number is growing, and it's chipping away at the 87, which I think previously had been a bigger number. Like I said, this facility is not getting any bigger, and it's not getting any cheaper as we continue to kick this decision around. But okay, I got what I needed. I'll have more to say after.
Mr. McDaniel.
Well, thank you, Commissioner LaCastro. That helped clarify things. I guess my question, coming back around, because one of the things that hasn't been discussed is the expansion of your existing facility, because that's coming in to get to the 165. Where you spread them out and who they go for is an entirely separate discussion. When we come into the operational aspects, as Commissioner Solis so adeptly put out a long time ago, he was afflicted with that mental issue called a law degree. I'm not. And when I was reading the operating agreement, it didn't really talk. You were funding-wise going to be looking at the same revenue stream that you're currently receiving from grants and state and federal and county funding, and the operating revenue was going to be supported over here in the new facility with no additional ask. The operating agreement that I read really only revolves around the new facility because that's what you're leasing from us. And so how is there sufficient management with regard to the operating expenses and those dispersals between the two facilities? Because you've almost got an equivalent equivalent amount, 78 in the existing facility by the time you're done moving and rehabbing and so on, and then an additional 87. The operating agreement that I was reading had specifically tied into the new facility. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah. So I think what you're alluding to is the fact that from an accounting standpoint that we have separation from an accounting of the operations of the central receiving facility compared to the other forms of the organization. And I can say emphatically, yes, we do. We have the capability. We've been doing it for many, many years of separating everything by department. So we actually have 45 different programs at DLC. So we run accounting for every one of those departments. So we have the opportunity to slice and dice all of the operational expenses and revenue by department, and we'll have a separate I guess a tab on our spreadsheet that would be specific to the central receiving facility, of which we've talked, with the clerk and with the county manager, that is, certainly something that we can go over with regularity with their teams as they would like to do that.
I guess, and it's hard. This is a terribly emotional subject, and you don't want to, as Mr. Morton said at the beginning, these are human beings. These are lives that we're dealing with every single day, and you don't want to correlate this to the bottom line and the bottom dollar. But you're effectively looking at more than doubling the bed capacities that you currently have, with no ask for any additional revenue, and then there is an additional 87 beds plus minus coming into the new facility without an additional ask for any more money. Although when I read the operating agreement, it said if you didn't have enough money, you were going to cut the LOS, the level of service, was going to be reduced to accommodate that if the revenue streams from alternative sources, federal, state, and then ultimately the general fund, weren't attainable.
That was introduced as an option. It's certainly not an option that we want to ever have to use, but we believe that we're going to be able to secure the funds that are not going to make that necessary.
I understand. I just have a tendency to plan for the worst and hope for the best. But when I was looking at that's multiple times that I've seen that come from your organization with regard to those potential. I want to say potential, but potential operational deficiencies.
Yeah.
Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, I think what we're struggling with here, we all agree, the subject here and the importance of a central receiving facility and a behavioral health facility in Collier County is unmatched. It's that important, just like Mr. Morton said. We're not disputing that. What we're trying to wrap our head around is the expenditure of public money to get to the expansion that we need and that we want. Originally, we started out with $26 million at 120 beds. Life happened, that went away. We approved a $56 million surtax maximum spend, but all of a sudden the beds went from 120 to like a net 60 to 67, whatever the numbers are. That's a lot of money for a small increase. Then we take a look at the pro forma, and we're losing over 80 grand a month in the beginning. And that, yes, the risk is on y'all, and that's that's all in the operating agreement. But I don't want to set this thing up to fail. If everything goes south, at the end of the day, the taxpayers wind up with a $56 million facility on 5 acres over there that we don't have any idea what we would do. I'm talking about if everything goes bad. If things don't go well, you can't exercise your option to purchase it and just things go bad. I don't want to set us up with that. I want to feel good about going forward, and I'm trying to get there. I'm trying in my hardest to get there. Father Orsi, I'm really trying to get there. Yes. But I think you can hear the concern from all of us about that. What is the net increase of services? What are we going to gain? I think we've had a good hint about the renovation from the existing building. That makes me feel better. But that's not part of our $56 million expenditure. That's something else that will just, that's a bonus for us. It's not something that we're taking part of. So I really do want to feel better about where we're going from here with building a new facility for this $56 million and getting a good grasp of what the actual increase of beds and services is for adults and for children. And I'm not there yet.
Okay, I want to help you get there. What would be helpful in that regard? I've tried to go through the beds. If it would be helpful to go through that again, we can do that.
Commissioner LaCastro said it in addition to what I was asking. I just want to know, for $56 million, what's the net increase of services in beds that we're gaining?
And
I don't care about what comes from here, what comes from there, what's going to renovate and increase over there. I don't care about any of that. For $56 million, what are we getting?
You're talking about between the two campuses.
I'm talking about for the central receiving facility that we're going to spend $56 million to build that facility. I don't care what the other services are. What are we getting for $56 million?
So there'll be 87 beds in that facility, and then if we're talking about having to subtract because of some of the beds that are going to be coming over, as Nancy mentioned, we have a 30-bed license that's partially children, partially adult. If we said 20 of those beds, 19 of those beds are going to come over that are adult beds, then it would be 87 less 19.
It would be a 67 bed net increase in services.
If you're subtracting what's coming over.
That's the question that I was asking. Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner LaCastro.
Thank you, Chairman. We all got quite a few calls from people of significant stature in the community and people who are interested in this facility being done correctly. The one miscommunication, at least I had having conversations with a few people, is this can be built anywhere. Okay, I'm a huge supporter of the right spot is DLC, and I voted yes every single time, even when it hasn't been unanimous. But the clock is starting to tick, and I'm sitting here really disappointed that we're still not there yet. And I can tell you this, when some people said to me, I can't believe the commissioners with such a great need in mental health are gonna let this facility evaporate. And the reality is it's not. It's gonna be built somewhere. It doesn't have to be on DLC property. And if we can't come to an agreement, if it seems like the numbers are off, if it seems like this is a better deal for DLC, and this is me just talking from the conversations I've had, then that's what's going to make this thing turn into a different deal with somebody else. So I think, we have limited time here, and in my initial closing comment right now, the person I'd really like to hear from, who's been in the middle of all the meetings, and I spoke with Ms. Patterson a couple days ago about speaking after you all did. I'd really like to hear from the county. We did a bit, but Ms. Patterson has been our five-star general at all the meetings. She's been the one talking to us and making a lot of concerning comments that have us up here trying to make sure we do the right thing. So, Ms. Patterson, I go over to you. You've got a microphone. We talked about me calling on you and saying, can you give us your perspective of why we're not at an agreement yet and what the main concerns are of the county, so we can wrap this up a bit and see if we're close and we just need another couple of weeks in negotiation, or if you've got bigger concerns than that, because we haven't been in these discussions the way you have. So I think it's great to go on the record, and you said you would, and I said I would call on you. So I think this is a good time for you to give us your summation.
Ms. Patterson?
Yes, sir. Thank you. So we pushed onto this agenda specifically to give us another meeting if we needed it. Now, we have been meeting regularly with the folks from David Lawrence as well as the community to get our arms around 17 meetings, if that's the number's worth of comments. And the board has become increasingly direct about your concerns and your support for mental health and for the central receiving facility, but also the questions that remain unanswered. And so we're much closer on these agreements than that we were even a few weeks ago, but there still remain those questions, and we've articulated this to the David Lawrence folks of things that need to be answered on the record so that the taxpayers, the people that paid into this, that voted for and then paid into this surtax, understand how this project has evolved. Because it did go forward under one set of assumptions, as many of these projects did, and because of circumstances not only with land use in the surrounding neighborhood, but also we had a pandemic that has wildly affected pricing, and all of those things that get us to now essentially a 60 or 70 bed facility for $56 million versus a 120 bed facility for $25 million, just using round numbers, from where we started at a concept to where we are now. And so that's an answer that we owe to the taxpayers. Otherwise, it just looks like we're really bad at doing our job. So we've talked a lot with the David Lawrence folks about that and about squaring up the beds, as we've had this very confusing conversation. Where are all of these beds? And I think to simplify it, what we have is we have the central receiving facility and all of the beds and concepts that will be there, as well as an expansion of children's beds, or beds that will be able to be used to a greater extent for children. That, outside of the purview of the surtax, is what I think is starting to confuse this a little bit. We are receiving less beds than we initially thought when we offered this up as a surtax project, but as many beds as now can be placed on this site due to height limitations and the zoning. We are now going to receive beds that are coming over because they fit into the central receiving facility, so that has to be considered when looking at that 87 beds. So that kind of rounds out the conversation about the beds. Regarding these agreements, we've worked extensively, and hats off to the David Lawrence folks and the staff for working on this. But the big question that you asked us is, what is this going, and we're going to get to this probably when your conversation goes, what is this going to cost the county? Because there was questions about the shortfalls, that big number shortfall. We know what we provide now for the current operations. The county needed surety. The taxpayers needed surety that we weren't going into something that we couldn't even get our arms around as far as a liability to the taxpayers. So there are certain limitations that are placed in this agreement that don't stop David Lawrence from coming back to ask the Board of County Commissioners. They have to do certain things and provide certain information, but you're going into this knowing that we're showing a shortfall in that pro forma, and not to say that things couldn't change, but they certainly could change either way, for the better or for the worse. But the board needs to, and the taxpayers need to understand that we're coming into this with a pro forma that does have a shortfall. That having been said, we know the need is there. The taxpayers voted for a project to be able to get after that need. Does that project have to be built on this property? That was a decision of the board and prior boards. Could we place this facility elsewhere? Yes. We have been very direct with David Lawrence as well, that we wouldn't be doing our jobs if in the background here we didn't continue to look at what all of our options were, because it could be the board's decision, it could be David Lawrence's decision, but we owe an answer to the taxpayer about how we're going to get after mental health. And so Commissioner LaCastro is correct. If you told us to go and find another location to build this, that is what we would do. And we have been actively looking at appropriate locations, not only on campus, but off of campus.
So can I have two quick follow-up
Yes, sir.
questions with you? And one of them might be for Mr. Burgess, so I'll ask the one that I think is maybe more for you, Ms. Patterson. This shortfall, should this be built on the David Lawrence Center site that we're concerned about, do you feel like the same exact shortfall would exist no matter where we put it? Or it would be significantly reduced if we found another location, and we know where some of the locations where we've talked about it before, and there's even been possibly some new ones that have popped up. I'm not holding you to an exact number, but would the shortfall be significantly reduced in some of the options other than DLC?
It would depend on what type of partner you had in that project. Obviously, the county is not going to run a mental health facility. We've been working hard to get away from doing things that we're not good at, and I would definitely put running a mental health facility into that category. So you would need to find a provider. Now, we don't know what that would look like or who is out there, because this deal, when it was done, this arrangement was not an arrangement that arose out of a solicitation. So we don't know what other providers would be out there or what their mix of beds, and I'm looking at Christy, and the types of payment that they may look at, if they are a not-for-profit versus a for-profit. So there's a lot of unanswered questions, and a lot of that would have to deal with how that solicitation was structured and what type of arrangement we entered into with a different provider.
So with what we know now, the significant shortfall we're all concerned about really isn't something that we can use as a detriment to the DLC deal, because it could exist with anybody, right? So even though it's significant, it's not that DLC specifically is creating the shortfall, and everywhere else it would be different, correct? Because we haven't done that.
We don't know the answer to that question. It does beg the question of the solicitation, and we don't know what the outcome of that would be. You get a lot of interest in some solicitations, and you get very little interest in others, and it's really a product of what's out there in the market. Are there other mental health providers? I'm certain that there are. Would they be interested in this concept? We wouldn't know unless we were to solicit it. So to some extent, there's risk on either side.
And that's where I've said we should exhaust all options with DLC before we magically go somewhere else. But my last question, and maybe it's for you, Mr. Burgess, or somebody on your team. I understand the moving of the beds, but one thing that might get a couple of commissioners here a little bit more positive about this is we all want maximum new beds. We want the delta to be as big as possible. I understand the cohesion and, wow, we're going to have this new center and now we can move stuff around and everything. But the negative by some people up here, and with good reason, is, wow, we built this new center with 87 beds, but then you immediately do some restructuring of the facility you currently have, and you get to eat up some of those beds, so it makes the delta a lot smaller. I realize the advantage of that, but do you have to? Is it a requirement for you to change anything over? Do you have a building that's collapsing or falling down? I realize moving the kids and the cohesion, but let's say you did nothing and the taxpayers built a facility that had 87 beds in it, and it was a delta of 87. Is that possible, or this moving of beds is a requirement by DLC because it makes the setup better? But also, too, you have to realize it's starting to become a detriment, because initially it was over 100 beds. Then, due to time and costs and everything, it's whittling down. You're chipping into the 87 even more with your restructuring of the beds you have in other buildings. And that's a negative for some people up here. And that's why I think you might not get all the votes that you want. Do you have to move those beds as some sort of requirement?
Is there some sort of requirement to do it? From a state standpoint, I would say I don't think there's a requirement. There's definitely a strong suggestion and recommendation to do it, because the whole premise and the definition of a centralized receiving facility is to have one spot that people would go to for those related supports. So I would put it at higher than being highly recommended.
I get that. I just think in the initial discussions 16 meetings ago, that wasn't talked about aggressively enough. So you have 5 commissioners up here that have seen the delta of beds we're adding, the positive delta slowly decrease, and then some of us might feel, me maybe even included, that we're artificially decreasing it even more. And that's not the right word, because like you said, all those who want to see this be the best facility might strongly suggest the move. The issue, though, is it makes the delta of beds we're adding even lower than it was when it was 100 and something. And so then that's where we sit up here doing the math and trying to get the best bang for our buck. And it's starting to feel less of a bang for some commissioners up here. And, we're trying to come to a collective decision here. So, but I hear your answer, so.
All right, we're going to have to take a break here in just a moment. Commissioner Colwell?
Just real quick. Thank you, Chairman. I just, we've been going around trying to figure out exactly what kind of delta we're going to end up with in the positive. And I understand what you're saying about the central receiving. You don't want to have people going to 2 different locations for the same service, especially if it's a Marchman or a Baker Act, something like that. So, right. It's understandable, but I just want to shed a little light, because I know we're talking numbers, beds, and those are small numbers. I want to talk about the big numbers. This is just rough estimates. You're talking, even at 87 beds, let's say that was a delta, 87. It's about $580 thousand per bed that the county's going to spend. Now, if you take out the 20 or 30 or 15, whatever these numbers we've been bouncing around, we're looking at close to $1 million a bed for this facility. And I know Mr. Morton, you've held people's portfolios and worked on those type of things. And if you had a client, I don't know if you would recommend that to a client, because I don't know if that's I don't know. It's just a hard number to wrap my head around. I mean, how we got there. And it's reality right now. That is the price tag. Close to $1 million a bed increase for the citizens of Collier County, their money to be spent. So.
Well, I would just mention that we do have the folks from DeAngeli's Diamond that have done, comparable construction estimates and assessments of comparable types of buildings to be built. I know they're here if the construction question is.
I think we're going to go to a break. I don't really need. I just wanted to kind of shed some light on not just talking numbers of beds. We're talking about real dollars that the citizens are spending on this. So.
All right, we're going to take a break in just a moment. We'll break until 11 o'clock. But let me suggest that there's a couple things that need to be clarified when we come back. Number one, the net increase in beds. That seems to me to be very simple. We have a net increase of 87 beds. Now, we're moving some of the use of the beds into that facility, but we're not eliminating the beds that exist. They're going to be used for something else. You're going to need to explain that. To me, it seems pretty simple, but that's being missed here, I think, somehow. And in addition, the facility itself, and you can clarify this when we come back, I assume it's more than just the beds. I assume that there are other facilities in this thing. It's not like a hospital where a hospital, if you pay $1 million per bed, that's probably pretty reasonable. But we're not really paying $1 million for each of these beds here because there's more in this facility than just the beds. But I think those two things need to be clarified. We're going to take a break until 11 o'clock. Good morning.
Chair, you have a live mic.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll take your seats, we're gonna proceed. I'm gonna ask Mr. Burgess if he's still in the audience. He may be seeking out psychiatric care somewhere right now.
He's out there. They're in a huddle.
Go get him.
I think they needed until 11:15 for that huddle.
I just want to ask him a quick question, and then we'll get back to. Mr. Burgess, as you're approaching the microphone, in terms of the number of beds you have now and the number you're going to have at the conclusion of this, I'm going to use just one example. You've got one facility that has 30 beds in it that are kids' beds and adult beds. You're going to move all of the adult uses of those beds over to the new facility. What's going to happen with those beds that would have been occupied by adults? I'm assuming that those 30 beds will continue to be 30 beds used for kids. And when you finish eating your lunch, let me know. No, I'm asking Mr. Burgess. I'm sorry. I don't want to be rude, but I'm asking Mr. Burgess. He's the CEO over there, and I want to get total clarification where there's no confusion.
Correct. Okay, so.
So let me, all right, so you got 30 beds right now. Those 30 beds, once this new facility's open, what's going to happen just with those 30 beds?
Those beds can continue to be providing Baker Act
I
service.
didn't ask you what they can be used for. I asked
They
you what
will
are-
be. They
okay,
will be
all right.
used
It's a little different than they can be used,
Yes.
all right? So they will be used. That's a commitment that you're making.
Yes.
All right. Now, there are other bed uses that you're moving to the new facility. What are the other bed uses you're moving to the new facility? You're moving those adult beds from those 30, but those will continue to be kids' beds. What other uses are you moving over?
We're not moving any.
Is that it?
Yeah, right. We will be operating 87 beds, all dedicated to Baker Act and Marchman Act. We are not moving.
That's not what I'm asking. I want to make sure we understand that the 78 beds you have right now, those 78 beds are going to continue to be operated. Those 30 beds will be kids' beds. What other beds where the use might change? If there are any. If those are the only ones, that's fine.
The kids' beds we'll be providing the Baker Act support for kids on the main campus, yes. And there's not going to be anything that's going to change. One question that came up was related to detox services. That's going to have to be handled in the current building, the new building.
Okay. All right, so other than the 30 beds, what we're talking about, there are no other changes in beds?
You referred to 3.
Yeah.
We have an emergency services department on the current campus that moves into the new building. That's 3 beds.
Okay, what happens to those 3 beds that are being used right now? Are they going to go away?
No, they'll stay.
What are they going to be used for?
It would be for emergency services for kids.
All right, so you're not giving up any beds. You are moving some uses, but you're not giving up any beds.
Correct.
And that's the X plus Y that I was talking about before. That's still the accurate equation. You got X beds now, Y beds are going in there, and you're going to have X plus Y. You're not eliminating one single bed by this.
You're not eliminating any beds.
All right, let's move on. We got a couple other commissioners. What I'd like to suggest is that we'll see how far we get, but then we'll go from there in terms of we have a 1 o'clock time certain as well, and I want to make sure we have a lunch break as well. Commissioner LaCastro.
Thank you, Chairman. So no beds disappear, right? A moving van doesn't come and take away any beds. A building isn't destroyed because you've gone over to the central receiving facility. Those beds still exist, but I think I sort of scratch my head a little, and maybe one or two other commissioners, when you say, no, those beds won't disappear, but they'll be used for emergency services or whatnot. I don't want to make it sound like, or I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I don't want to make it sound like there's sort of overages for emergency things that may or may not pop up, because the mission that those beds were used for is now in the central receiving facility. So we'll continue to keep those 30 beds with pillows on them and made, but the mission of those beds has been moved over. That's not untrue. The mission is moved over, but those beds will still have a need and will still be used. They're not just sort of extra overages for something that may not happen frequently, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
They will remain, they will be used, and a great example of that is the children's services, Baker Act services, and emergency services for kids that we operate now will continue to operate, and those beds are there for that purpose.
Okay, that's more clear than like an hour ago when I think some of us were hearing, when the beds move over. That's why I was saying, so then the building gets destroyed or the beds get taken away, and so you've answered that. Yeah. My second question is, there's definitely a disconnect, or we're not quite in full agreement on the operational procedures of how the county and DLC is going to partner, the naming rights, the other things. And this is all part of today's vote. And from my discussions with our county manager and with our clerk of courts and others, and the other commissioners have all spoken with the same people, there's some definite disconnects or not full agreement. Does anybody want to tackle that now? Because that's another 800-pound gorilla that's sitting in the room that requires us to see if we think we're close enough that maybe nobody's signing on the dotted line today, but today's vote is to continue to extend the conversation and work out the fine details of the agreement. I would ask you, and then I would ask Ms. Patterson to chime in for the benefit of all five of us. How far away are we on an agreement for the operational procedures of how we're going to partner, and also too on the money, the naming rights, and those other things? I'd like to hear your comment, and then I know Ms. Patterson can speak, for the county, because that's a big part of our vote today as well.
Sure. As far as we're concerned, and our board has been very active as well in the conversation, we are comfortable with where we are on all of those. So I
know, but are we?
Is the county?
Yeah.
Oh, I would assume so. I mean, we are here today, and the documents have been provided, and I know our legal teams have talked. I believe we're on the complete same page with everything.
Okay, well, if Ms. Patterson says that's exactly right, and we are, then this will be a very fast vote. So, but you still have the floor, and ma'am, whoever.
Yes, just really quickly, I just want to add for the documents, again, Sally Ashkar, Assistant County Attorney for the record. We have finalized all of the documents. I think, Commissioner, what you're referring to maybe is the funding related to this. As you know, in the operating agreement, there's not a maximum spend for funding anywhere listed in here. What you have in front of you is the pro forma, and that does show deficit in funding. We have the naming rights agreement that helps to compensate that on the back end. To the extent that there is additional funding required for this facility, that's for DLC to answer. But in terms of the documents and in terms of operation, we are all in agreement that these are the documents that we're working with today that have been published in your agenda.
And before you leave the podium, then, and I'll get to you real quick. Just a question. The second big issue, we had the number of beds. The other big issue was the obligation of the county in terms of the general fund going forward. You've answered that, but it was a long time ago. So can you again tell this board what our obligations are in terms of ongoing funding for this project if it starts to get to a point where they're losing a lot of money in this?
The county is only responsible for the construction of the facility. We are not responsible for operation of the facility. There is a provision in the contract that allows DLC to approach the board should they request additional deficit funding. And the board at that time has the option to either approve that request, approve a a reduction in level of service, or we can terminate the contract. That's one of the terminable events in the contract. But other than that, the county does not have any responsibility for operational funding. And DLC actually is responsible for the initial FF&E, the furniture, fixture, and equipment investment and ongoing replacement of FF&E for the term of the lease.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the clarification of the existing facility and the new facility offer up further issues with me. As you know, I haven't been thrilled with this transaction from the beginning. Now with the segregation of 78 beds in the existing facility, whatever their uses are, and 87 beds in the new facility, whatever their uses are, the management of the expenses associated with your aggregate operations is difficult for me to wrap my arms around. I see the potential, and again, the operating agreement that is here in front of us says the same thing that you said to us in December. If we have enough money, we're going to do a good job. If we don't have enough money, we're going to ask you for more, or we're going to cut services, reduce the level of service.
Well, can I clarify?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay.
Absolutely.
So what we have also indicated is that we're going to be seeking funding from other sources, the naming rights being one of those sources. So we're seeking philanthropic support specifically for that building, for the furniture, fixture, equipment, for any deficit type of operational delta that might be there. So that's a source of potential funding. And we also have obligated ourselves to try to work with other community partners that may be willing to step up as well in this pursuit, that we will try to secure resources from the hospitals and other sources because of it being a community benefit, and we're taking that responsibility on ourselves to seek that support as well. So we've got the community support, we've got the philanthropic support, on top of all the other efforts that we're going to try, which would be federal, state sources of funding, leveraging federal funds. So there's a lot of different pieces to trying to secure that. If at the end of all of that, we are not able to be completely successful, that's when we might come before the county commission and ask. And then at that point in time, obviously the county commissioners have the ability to either support that or not support that. And if the decision is not to support that, then that's where we would have to come forward to say, okay, this is what we would look to do. But that's not our intention, and that's a lot of ifs that go all the way before that final step.
I understand, and I know it's a lot of ifs, but again, I personally have to plan for the worst, hope for the best, and then figure a way to make things happen. I have expressed concerns significantly about this facility, about these operations from the get-go, and I don't mean to belabor the point, but I'm still stuck on the administration side or the operational side with the two different facilities, because the operating agreement that is here today in front of us solely deals with the new facility. It doesn't, I don't see a clear path for us to get there. So at some point, I have other comments, but there again, at some point, I do want to make a positive statement here, and it has to do with our county manager. It's not us against you. It's not her against you. This is a community circumstance, and I want to compliment our county manager for the efforts, the information that's been provided to us with very specific truths, if you will, on how, what, when, where, and how. I just want to say thank you right now, no matter how this goes.
Mr. Burgess, do you have anything else in terms of the presentation? Any other participants in the participation in your presentation?
Yeah.
And Commissioner Castro, you have some questions?
I was just going to make a statement, and we can chew on it for a bit, and I don't want it to sound premature if there's more. Let's see if they have more to add.
We're going to move to public comment pretty quickly here, so let's.
The item that was brought to my attention is just to make sure that you had the updated pro forma that's been worked on with the county, that you have the current numbers associated with.
Could you give a copy of that to the manager? And Ms. Patterson, could you make copies of that, get that to us, or have somebody make copies? Let's get some copies of that. It's just, if there are a bunch of numbers.
Yeah, I believe it. No, there's
little
not a bunch of numbers. It's actually just the bottom line number, and I'm.
Oh, okay, I'm
What's
sorry.
the bottom line number? We can tell you if we got it.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah. How many public comments are there, Troy?
We have 8 registered speakers.
So, Mr. Chair, if I can just say, I'm not.
Yes, sir.
You know, and you've always said, and we all agree, we want to hear from the public comment. I'm just going to throw this out there. You know, you always say you can count noses, you know, sometimes, and there are some concerns up here. One thing I would say is, you know, I don't want to see a rush to judgment and in a negative way, because we're sort of stalling on this. I think there's still room to exhaust every possibility. On June 3rd, we're having a mental health discussion here, which has nothing to do with this. It's totally separate, but all the right people are still going to be in this room. And so one of the proposals I'll make a little prematurely, but I'll just throw it out there for the commissioners to think about. So we have that chance to talk about everything we're going to talk about at mental health. But then if we wanted to switch gears and take a lunch break and then before everybody goes home, dive into this a little bit, we have that possibility. I believe I'd asked our county manager if that was possible, and she said it was. And then our next meeting is on June 10th. So we have sort of 2 bites at the apple if we don't feel like we've gotten all the answers that we're exhausting today. And so, you know, my premature thought would be we continue this to June 10th. It gives us June 3rd to talk about it a bit. It gives until June 10th to have everybody meet with us separately if they want to. Your board members, everybody that's involved, Father Orsi, our county managers and whatnot. And then, you know, if by the 10th we can't get 3 votes, then, I mean, we all know the importance of a central receiving facility, but as we've all said before, it doesn't have to go on the DLC site. I personally believe it's the site that makes the most sense by 1 billion miles. But if we can't come to an agreement on the performa, the naming rights, the money, how many beds we're really getting and what it costs, then, I mean, you know, we got to move forward somewhere because we want, this facility is going to happen somewhere. So I don't want to jump ahead of the public comments, but I think we know what we're going to hear in the public comments, and I think it's things that we know, but I also think it will add to the discussion. But I think we have a chance here to not jump into something quickly here and ask for a quick vote when it's obvious to me that there's still some unanswered questions here that we could use the next 2 times we meet and all the time in between to solve. So it's just a thought. I'm not making a motion, but that would be my motion if it was time. But I think the public comment is probably next.
All right. Mr. Miller?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. As I said, we have 8 registered speakers here. Your first speaker is Father Michael Orsi, and he'll be followed by Julie Schmelsley. I'm reticent to start the timer on the first speaker.
You don't jump from last speaker to first speaker because I have a funeral at 12 o'clock, and there's no reason for 2 people to be late, me and the deceased. I want to first of all say that I know each and every one of you. You are all very, very good men. You have very, very good hearts, and I know that you are concerned for the community. I tend to agree with Mr. Locastro. It doesn't seem that we are ready to make a good decision today. I know my friends at David Lawrence might be shocked that I'm saying this, but I want all of us to win. And this can be a win-win situation. As I told you before, believe it or not, God does speak to me. This proposal is the right thing to do for our community. I know you're concerned about your campaign promises. You're worried about the taxes and what are the constituents of our different districts going to think about what we are going to do with this central receiving center. The fact of the matter is, It is the right thing to do. Is it the right time now at this moment? Maybe not at this moment, but it's the right thing to do. As Commissioner Castro said, there are going to be 2 other attempts to take a bite out of the apple. When we come to that juncture, there's only one right thing to do, and that is to approve this project. God's children are suffering in our community. In a community like ours, there's no reason for this. These are the poorest of the poor. And David Lawrence is offering a solution. I know that Commissioner Hall and I have had our discussions, and he is struggling to come to a good decision. And Chris, you will come to a good decision. I know that. I know your heart. I know the hearts of all of you. So I'm going to propose that we maybe take another bite out of the apple, get some clarification, but it can go no further. Build it, and they will come. And not to act is to act. And so I'm willing to wait. But I hope that you will pray very hard over the decision that you're going to make. And God has spoken very clearly. This project must go forward. God bless you. Amen.
Commissioner Colwell, was it the next meeting that you may not be at the next meeting?
No. That's that June 24th.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, that's.
Your next public speaker is Julie Schmelzley. She'll be followed by Caitlin George. A couple of things. I want to ask the speakers to queue up at both podiums to move this along. Also remind speakers you have 3 minutes and you'll get a single beep at 30 seconds to go. Julie?
Yes, good morning. For the record, Julie Schmelzley. My role today is really as a community leader, but also as a business leader. And first of all, I want to, sitting here for 2 hours in the numbers, I have to go to my office and work on some numbers this afternoon, but I do want to commend all of you for the very thoughtful questions, the clarification that is necessary when it comes to spending public funds. Those public funds for this intake facility voted on by the voters to spend for this very important project. And I don't want to lose sight that that is an additional need or support of a need for this community in terms of mental health. You have an exceptional partner here in David Lawrence that's been taking care of our community for 50-some years. It is now incumbent on all of us, given the growth of our community, the complexity of our community, and what is continuing to evolve around mental health, whether it's our children or our adults. We need to take this as an opportunity to move along. You know, the numbers don't lie in terms of, I think it's been a decade that we started dreaming or talking about this intake facility and what that would mean for this community. We voted on it as a community as a top priority, both for our community and for our business community, which I will speak to. I know that this is a challenge and the devil is in the details, truly. It does sound as though within this operating agreement, Commissioner McDaniel, I don't necessarily disagree with you on this. We're so close. Let's take this over the finish line. I am fully in support of whether I come back another date soon or we come to a conclusion today. But I do want to thank all of you for your thoughtfulness. The time is now. We got to get this done. The need is not going away. The combined, we talk about 87 beds being the new, in that being borne by the taxpayers. Yet, you have a community partner here in David Lawrence that you've got combined impact, all wanting to do the right thing for our community in supporting mental health. So thank you very much for today, and Godspeed to you all.
Your next speaker is Caitlin George, and she will be followed by Amanda Pearson.
Good morning. My name is Caitlin George, NCH Administrative Director for all of NCH's emergency departments and Marco Island Urgent Care. Thank you all county commissioners We greatly value and respect your concerns regarding how many beds are going to be added at David Lawrence Center. The long and short of it is they're going to add 87 beds minus the 30 that they're moving over. That's increasing 57 beds, which is almost doubling their current capacity. So I'm here to explain to our taxpayers what their return on investment is going to look like. It's doubling the capacity of our mental health resource beds here in Collier County, which means improved, timely access to mental health resources and care, and also what that means for them when they visit our NCH emergency departments. Improved access to medical treatment in the emergency department. As a certified emergency nurse of 20 years who has worked across the country in numerous emergency departments in cities such as Seattle, Denver, and Detroit, and right here in Naples, Florida, I have witnessed firsthand the national and local challenges that we face with overcrowding in the ER. Longer boarding hours, higher acuity patient cases, and an increase in psychiatric and behavioral health emergencies visiting our ERs every day. I want to talk about a major community need that impacts not just patients and healthcare workers, but our entire NCH organization. The urgent need for a dedicated central receiving facility in our community. At NCH, we deeply believe that every individual should receive compassionate, timely, and appropriate health care, especially those experiencing a mental health crisis. Emergency rooms are not mental health facilities. They're for patients they're not for patients experiencing a mental health crisis. They should be evaluated and stabilized at our community behavioral health central receiving facility at David Lawrence Center. Individuals that are experiencing suicidal thoughts, depression, psychosis are often left to wait for hours or even days in our ERs, waiting for specialized behavioral health treatment and evaluation because there are not enough mental health beds available. Supporting the central receiving facility will expedite timely patient care, reduce wait times, boarding hours, and improve care. On behalf of NCH, we strongly support the addition of the central receiving facility to support our community behavioral health care needs. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Kimberly Dye, and she'll be followed by Garrett Byron.
Kimberly Dye, but I am here to put into the record a letter from our founder, Polly Keller, who's with us today, but she has vision issues, so she's asked me to read the letter officially. Dear Chairman Saunders and the Collier County Board of County Commissioners, I'm writing to you today to ask that you approve the contract with David Lawrence Centers for Behavioral Health for the Collier County Behavioral Health Center. As an advocate, volunteer, and supporter of David Lawrence Centers for nearly 60 years, I know that this center is critical to the long-term health and success of this community that we all love. Collier County has grown significantly since the center was founded by a small group of citizens in 1968. And with that growth has come a greater need for mental and behavioral health care for children, families, adults, and seniors. For more than 55 years, David Lawrence Centers has been there to answer the call of our neighbors in need. In 2024, more than 8,700 children and adults received care through programs offered at DLC. The heartbreaking reality, though, is that so many more people in our community need access to the life-saving and life-changing services. Last year alone, nearly 1,400 adults were admitted into DLC's Crisis Stabilization Unit for immediate crisis care. The Collier County Behavioral Health Center will allow more adults to receive emergency care each year, tripling the number of adults DLC can serve in crisis, such as adults requiring inpatient care through the Baker Act or Marchman Act. It will be a place where seniors with Medicare can seek inpatient care, a rarity in Southwest Florida. Right now, Collier County is in the biggest mental health crisis it's ever been in. Imagine the difference this new center will have in this community. I dream that one day the need for compassionate mental health and substance use services isn't as great as it is today, but until then, my dream is that we can meet the needs of our families, our friends, and our neighbors. I urge you to approve the contract with David Lawrence Centers for the Collier County Behavioral Health Center. Your support will bring my dream and the dream of so many in our community one step closer to reality. Thank you for your continued commitment to Collier County. Polly Keller.
Thank you.
Your next speaker is Garrett Byron, and he will be followed by Dudley Goodlett.
For the record, Garrett FX Byron. FX is Francis Xavier. That's a Catholic orientation. 56 years ago, believe it or not, 56 years ago, I was summoned to the south end of Gordon Drive by a guy named Douglas Bathy. He was trying to sell me a piece of property that I wasn't that crazy about buying on the East Trail. Now, Douglas Bathy was married to Mercy Bathy. And the piece of property they want to sell me now, oddly enough, is now named after Donna Fiella. It's a state park, or it's a county park. Long and short was that was not where he was going to build the facility that we know as the David Lawrence Center. Now, David Lawrence was a kid. He was actually Douglas and Mercy Bathy's stepson. And he was 16 years old, and he slit his wrists, and he died. And his father, Douglas Bathy, decided that with his money, and he was a little short of cash at the time, he wanted to build a facility and name it after his son, the David Lawrence Center. So I was in a position where I wasn't that crazy about buying the property he wanted to sell me, because it was right next to Naples Manor, and it was a good season. It was 143 acres. And I thought, well, why don't you build your facility on that site? And he said, no, I picked out a different site to build the David Lawrence Center on. And that's the center, that's where it is now. And the amount of money that was transferred was only going to buy that piece of property, an original site, and to build his little facility. And he went ahead and did that. And that was 56 years ago. I was in his house. His house was on the south end of Gordon Drive. And oddly enough, I was sitting in his living room, and he was a big, tall guy, but his ceilings were only 8 feet high. His living room was like 40 feet long. And of course, his view was the Gulf of Mexico. And he said to his wife, Mercy, would you get Mr. Byron a glass of iced tea?
Going as soon as
And all I could think of was I was sitting there buying a piece of property I really wasn't that crazy about, from a guy that decided that in the end of his life, and he was an older guy, he said, I was going to build this facility because I lost my son. And that's something you don't want to ever do. You don't want to lose any of your own kids. And it was sad, but, I sat there thinking, I was looking at the ceiling saying, how could you build a mansion on the beach and have an 8-foot-high ceiling? That's all I could think about. I wasn't even thinking about his 16-year-old son who slit his wrist and died. I'm a different person today. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Dudley Goodlett, and he will be followed by Andy, is this Solis? Mr. Goodlett has been seated 3 additional minutes from Amanda Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be short.
That's easy to say.
First of all, I was distributing a letter from Garrett Richter, who was not able to be here today, but asked that I come and present his letter to you, and I'm pleased and a pleasure to do so. Dear Collier County Commissioners, I regret that I am out of town and not able to speak in person this Board of County Commissioners meeting. If I were in town, I would address the board in great favor of the operating agreement. The DLC receiving facility was the reason I cast my vote in favor of the 1% sales tax initiative, which narrowly passed in 2018. As you're all aware, DLC addresses the critical needs of our community regarding mental health issues. These issues are tremendous, and they are growing. David Lawrence Center is extremely meaningful and is severely underfunded by both Medicaid and our state, and yet it fights the good fight on a daily basis to address the mental issues that nobody wants to discuss except in their prayers. Why will this facility operate in the red? Because a large majority of the people that are served at the facility are brought there by Collier County Sheriff's Office or first responders. They have no insurance, they have no money. Nonetheless, they receive high-quality attention from the professionals at the center. Medicaid reimburses a small fraction of that cost, while those without Medicaid and insurance pay even less or nothing at all. While the cost of this project was increased over the years, we were fortunate to enter into a maximum price construction agreement with the builder. Your vote to approve the operating agreement and begin construction will enable us to move forward without facing more severe construction increases if that contract expires. I ask that you vote in favor of the operating agreement in order to continue the effective partnership we have with Collier County to meet the increasing needs of our community. Garrett Richter. And I would fully endorse that, but I don't want to read it again and say that's in my opinion. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members.
Thank you. Hello, my friend.
Your final registered speaker for this item is Andy Solis.
For the record, Andy Solis. It's good to be here and see you all. And
No, it's
I don't
not.
envy you.
No, it's
I don't envy you.
Sir, can you speak up a little bit, please, into the microphone? Thank you.
And did we swear him in? Are you sworn in on that? Tell him, there you go.
I do not envy your job on this. It's been a long and difficult journey. I know when it started in 2016, the intent was to increase the county's capacity to service the residents suffering from mental health and addiction. And yes, I'm in recovery. I don't practice law anymore, so I'm in recovery. But
look at you.
And I went to law school because I wasn't good at math. But the intent was to increase the capacity, not specific capacities. So sitting in the back, I just want to say that if there are 30 beds currently and 87 are being built, and the 30 beds are going to be remaining after the CRS is built, the net, to me, and I think I just heard something else from NCH, but the net is 87 beds for the good of the community. And the one thing I did learn was the permitting of mental health services is really complicated. And I did not even try to understand it because it was that complicated. So where the services will be provided, I think, is probably in great respect dictated by the state and by the licensing. But this is an 87-bed benefit to the community. It's a game changer from 30 to what the total of that is. And I think the math is simple and the issue's simple. And thank you for doing the heavy lifting and fly-specking the agreements. I mean, I think you're doing a great job on that, and that needs to be done because it is taxpayer funds. But this is a high priority for the community. It's always been that, and I hope you support approving the contract today. The community needs it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner LaCastro.
Doesn't Commissioner Solis look well rested? I mean, look at him. I'm envious. Listen, to keep things moving along and see if we have the support, and if we don't, then we have other options. But I'm of the mindset that a B+ decision today is better than an A+ decision that never comes. And we need a central receiving facility somewhere. I've been a strong supporter that the smartest place to put it is DLC. I'm just a little disappointed that the agreement hasn't come together quicker. Like I said, I don't feel like we're building the International Space Station here, but also we're talking big dollars, and nobody wants to build something that costs $1 million per bed or lose, $1 million a year, although these facilities aren't supposed to be cash cows. I mean, we're investing in the mental health of our community, but we also have to make sure we have the money. And I'm always of the thought that it has to be at least 51% good for the community and 49% good for David Lawrence, or even more for the community. Why? Because we're putting taxpayer dollars among this. So this can't be, we hand you the keys to a facility and it gives the impression that it's some big, huge advantage for DLC to move around beds and do all these things. And in the end, it's just costing us money. So this has to be crystal clear. Even the amount of beds, in the last 15 minutes, we just heard two different things about the beds. I mean, no offense to the NCH person, but you guys got to get your story straight. We're either getting 87 beds and the other beds aren't moving. They're saying that there's a 30% of the beds move, and then that means there's a delta of less than 87. Somebody better stop saying that or tell us that that's exactly what's going to happen. So we've heard from all the speakers. I don't want to cut any of my commissioners off if they're lit up, but I think I might be the only one.
No, you're not.
Okay, well, you can say something, but my motion is going to be that we approve this. We still have some homework to do and some pencils to sharpen, but we approve this today. If it fails, we still have, like I said, a chance to take a few more bites out of the apple, but I think we're quickly approaching a time where we have to make a command decision to either move forward with maybe a B+ decision and then try to tighten it up down the road, or move in a totally different direction if we have other options. But my motion will be that we approve this today, and then you continue to tighten it up as we would with any deal. But I'll leave that out there, and obviously other commissioners have comments.
Commissioner LaCastro on the motion, just so there's some clarity. Because I will second the motion, but I need to understand what it is. And I would ask Sally Asghart to come up to the podium. To move this along today, what are the terms of a motion that needs to be approved? Assuming that we're going to move forward.
You would move to approve the amendment to the vacant land contract, which is inclusive of the edits to the lease and the operating agreement. Those are exhibits. And it would be also the amendment to the naming rights agreement. That was the agenda item for today.
Commissioner LaCastro, is that your motion?
That's my motion.
All right. To get the motion on the floor, I'll second it. We have 3 people lit up. Commissioner Kowal.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to have this meeting today and have some clarity, but I think I got more questions than than I had before we ended the meeting. And that being said, I know we have the June 10th meeting is kind of the drop dead date, because I think I was told that the contractor has till the 22nd of June. So it's not like if we didn't do it today, it couldn't happen on the 10th. And then having the workshop on the 3rd, which sits between the 2 meetings today and the one on the 10th. I just want to clarify. I know a lot of people coming up here and telling us how we need a mental health facility. We passed a mental health facility. We did it back in, I want to say, 2022. This commission, these 5 people right up here, heard it for hours and hours, and we passed to build a mental health facility on that swath of property. We did that part, and we kept continuing on that part when we got to a ceiling of maximum payment on the construction, and we did that part. The part that we haven't gotten is the fact that every time we look at an operational contract, the goalpost keeps getting moved. And it's every time we have to revisit the contract, it's something new, and it's either diminishing beds, or it's these beds are here, those. I got questions like, how many people do you plan on hiring? How many new employees does David Lawrence plan on hiring for this new facility? How many employees are already there that are going to be moved over with the 33 beds that are already employed by David Lawrence? I don't have any of these answers. I just have numbers. So these things are just, to me, I think, are still questions that they're hanging out there. And I understand that, the contract's written basically in our favor. If you go down the road and this doesn't happen the way it's supposed to happen, and all the sugar plums don't line up in our dreams and dandelions and all that, we can walk away from it. And they have an option to buy it. But, that's a steep price tag at $57 million. So, it's just the way I feel. I think we still have some time to get some answers, or, so that's my opinion right now.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. There may be a record of me supporting this somewhere along the line. And again, just for a brief reiteration, when Commissioner Saunders, when you and I became county commissioners, Collier County didn't have a mental health plan. I was told that by HHS up in Washington, D.C. in 17, the first year I was in office. Commissioner Solis, wherever he went. Oh, there he is in the back. Glad you're recovering, by the way, my friend. He's the one that grabbed onto it and developed that mental health plan. Mr. Burgess was the chair of that facility. And again, most all of you have heard me say out loud, there's little to no rehabilitation that comes with incarceration. And knowing all those things, the need hasn't ever gone away. David Lawrence isn't going to go away, whether we approve this transaction or not. We're still going to be partners with them. They still have, I would assume, some rationale of expansion of the existing facility, rehab somehow, some way, whether or not we accept this transaction as is or not. I still feel that the location isn't the right location. It was referenced in the original study that the mental health stakeholders committee put together, that this location is not the #1 choice. I still feel the operating agreement that's in front of us today is inadequate. I see performance issues that are nebulous to me with regard to how you're going to track it, and so many people, 40%, 80% of the people are going to get response within 7 days. I don't know. Without beating that horse, I'm not happy with the existing operating agreement. I still see inadequacies there. So, having said that, I haven't even got into the CMAR with the contract that we have for a contractor that is the maximum guaranteed price, and I'm not sure that can even in fact be attained. So I'm not in support of haven't been in support of going forward with this at all. I think we need to regroup. Maybe we can regroup a little bit on the June 3rd workshop when you suggested that we can talk about this a little bit more. But I can't get happy. I can't get happy with this facility, so I'm not in support of the motion.
Mr. Hall.
Thank you. So I have a question maybe for county manager or for a county attorney. If we approve this operating agreement with David Lawrence Center, can this thing be in effect whether we do it in a new facility that we're going to build or whether we opt to do a different facility and they are the operator? Is this specifically tied to the new central receiving facility?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, the operating agreement has been thought out, and there are still some things that are unanswered in it. And it does protect the county, which makes me feel a little better. But it still implies there's an underlying implication, even though it says that there's not, that in the future the county could be behind the 8 ball, because none of us want to sit up here and say, no, we're not going to approve your money because you're in a deficit and put us in a bad situation. But we would be in a bad situation, and I, for one, right there, would lead the cause in saying, nope, we told you this in the beginning. This is not going to be on the taxpayers. Number 2, the naming rights. I have no problem with the naming rights, as far as raising revenue. But they're a one-time thing. It's a one-time occurrence that you get revenue for naming rights. However long that money lasts is unimportant. But that's not an ongoing source of revenue unless it's structured to be that way. The finance statement, the money spent to increase the beds, the funding options of the naming, and several other of these things, it seems to me like we're trying to squeeze a square peg into a round hole at this time. When it all boils down to it, there's 30 beds that exist right now that are paid for. We're going to spend $56 million and build 87 beds, of which 30 of those are going to be coming over from the other buildings. So the net increase is going to be 57, 60 beds, whatever it is. It's not a net increase of 87 beds for $56 million. 30 of them are already existing. If you built 87 beds and nothing came over, that's a net increase of 87 beds. So maybe as just some thoughts going forward into the workshop, whether we approve this agreement or not, these thoughts need to be thought about. Maybe we reduce the size of the asset and make it expandable in the future at the current location. Maybe we change the existing facility, change to an existing facility that can be modified specifically for the services that David Lawrence Center provides. Maybe put it on campus or somewhere else. Maybe David Lawrence Center could handle the mental health aspects of the county's needs, which they do very well. My confidence is there as far as mental health. And then partner with other agencies or nonprofits that handle the substance abuse very well, thus being able to utilize their revenue and let them share in the expenses. So what I'm thinking right now is I don't think this is a matter of not if, but how. How do we arrive to do something smart for the taxpayer, to do something that's smart for the community, to do something that's going to benefit all without just throwing $56 million at the wall and seeing how it sticks, if it sticks. And like I said, the operating agreement does protect the county, but I don't want to be put in the situation later to where I'm going to say no if the ask comes for the taxpayers to support the operations of it. And I don't want to be in that position. And I would like to see, my thoughts were, as Mr. Morton was speaking, he said, I run a private equity group. If you presented this deal as it stands to the private equity group, the little glass box would slam shut, no deal. Because a private equity group is not going to enter into an investment, regardless of the cause, with their own money, with this performer or with these perceived outcomes. So I'm all for extending the conversation. I'm not concerned at all about the timing of anything. This is our 17th meeting. If we get it done in the 19th meeting, I think it'll be okay. But what we want to do is do something that's correct, do it in good stewardship with the public money, and ultimately treat our mentally ill and our people that are in our community with substance abuse with dignity and a way out. And I think that we are all sharp enough to come up with those answers.
I seconded the motion because I wanted to have this conversation. I wanted each one of us to go on the record and talk in terms of what our concerns are. I had two big concerns. One was the the net increase in the number of beds. To me, it's clear. It's 87. That has to be clarified between now and whenever this comes back. The other issue was the limitation on what the obligation was for the taxpayers going forward. That was taken care of the contract. Everything I wanted in this agreement is in this agreement. Everything I wanted in the naming agreement is in the agreement. There's nothing else here that I need. Obviously, there's some clarification that the board needs. I'm going to withdraw my second because I don't want to run the risk of having a vote today and have it fail. I don't know what the outcome would be. I can count two that would be in favor. I can count two against, and I'm not sure where the other one would be, and I'm not going to run the risk. So I'm going to withdraw my second to the motion. That unless somebody else wants to second the motion fails for a lack of a second. And we'll just have to come back and deal with this at another date. But for the record, I withdraw my motion, my second to the motion. Commissioner LaCastro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think we accomplished. I made the motion because I wanted to, I don't want to say force the hand, but I wanted you to hear the serious concerns. And you heard, even Commissioner Saunders and I made the motion and he seconded it. We've got a few questions written down here. So I will modify my motion to make the motion that we continue this until June 10th. And at the 3rd, we have an opportunity after we talk about all the concerns of mental health, and that's going to bring a lot of things to the forefront, to not waste that day to talk about some of the other loose ends. But I think on the 10th, like we've said, maybe there's no timeline, but there kind of is. And like I said, I'd rather see the B+ answer that happens than an A+ answer that we have 27 meetings over. So the clock's ticking here pretty quick. I'll make the motion that we continue this till June 10th. And I know all of our doors are open, and the more commissioners you can get to, the more meat we can put on the bone, the more clarity we can get, the more support you can get, not only from the 5 votes up here, but from other people on the county staff that have concerns. I think that's the way to go. So I'll make a motion that we continue this until June 10th.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Well, I will second that motion.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Commissioner McDaniel.
Yeah, I'll withdraw my comments since we're moving off to the 10th. I'll withdraw.
Okay. In terms of this being continued into the 10th, obviously, we're going to need a time certain again.
Yes, sir.
And want to thank everyone that participated. I think it was a good discussion. I'm a little frustrated because I think to me, a lot of these issues were clear, but they became somewhat muddied. I think the folks that are in support of this, you have a couple weeks to clarify these issues, in particular, the number of beds that are going to be added because of this facility. I think that's critical. I'm sorry?
After you're done.
Yeah, okay. Commissioner McDaniel, then we'll wrap up.
Since you're reiterating concerns, delineation on the operating agreement between the two different facilities, between the new facility and the existing facility, and the expansion of the beds within the existing facility and the operating costs associated with that, and the segregation is going to be imperative for me to get, for me to move into some kind of place where I could live with it. It's I don't see with the current operating agreement that's presented to us today that you wanted to approve, we're not obligated to pay anymore, but there's a doubling plus of the beds that are going into the existing facility, and we're not going to be asked to come back and support the existing financing that we have in there. So if we're reiterating concerns, that's something that I want to see tightened up.
All right, so this will be continued until June 9th, is that correct?
June 10th.
June 10th, I'm sorry.
We will add a line to the workshop when we print that agenda to allow for some open discussion of this item if there's any questions, or if there's anything else that the board comes to mind. It won't be an action item because it's a workshop, but it'll allow some more dialogue as it might evolve to in that on June 3rd.
And I would urge, and I know everybody will do this, but I would urge if you have specific questions, let's get them to Scott Burgess and to the team there and try to get answers between now and the 10th. With that, we will.
Can I add something?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman? Something I think, Ms. Patterson, that would be very helpful on the 3rd and definitely on the 10th, and we didn't have it at this meeting. Whenever we vote on construction or an apartment building or what have you, we always have somebody from the county staff that comes up and doesn't tell us how to vote, but gives us sort of the pluses and minuses and gives us a recommendation. Everyone seems to be sort of staying away from that. You know, we've heard from different county staff members in private in our offices, but no one seems to want to come up to the podium and say, wow, we really knocked this out. We have 2 things that are loose, but nothing that we think, should disapprove this. So our recommendation is A, B, C, D, and E. I think the reason the county staff as a whole hasn't said that is there are still some disconnects. On the 10th, me personally, if I don't hear something from a senior leader on the county staff saying, wow, some of the things 2 weeks ago that you were worried about, we're really close, something definitive. We get that for some of the smallest decisions we make here. This is a huge one. So I would hope that would be part of the discussion on the 3rd and definitely part of the puzzle on the 10th.
Yes, sir.
All right, we will be in recess until 1 o'clock.